Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's great to see all of you here tonight. Greetings, greetings. Thank you very much for being here. Awesome. Awesome to be back with all you lovely people. We have already a comment in the chat. Huh. Marked confusion. That's the hallmark of a good review show. You should come away asking questions and wanting answers. Well, we're here to provide you with all the answers you would need. We're dual streaming to Mike S. Miller's channel, so apologies in advance for all the lewd and untoward content that audience is not accustomed to, but is quite the standard over here. We have Jalapeno Milk jumping in. He says, Rip-A-Verse sucks, end review LMAO. I don't know how much thought went into that comment, but I do appreciate you leaving it, so thank you very much. John Wick is here. He says, hi. Hey, John. I promise that nobody has harmed any pets on this stream. Please do not retaliate in any way whatsoever. Holster yourself, sir. With that, everybody, let me unholster a little bit and get out the big guns. We got some big guns on the panel. It's a big gun review. Ripped and ready to roar. It's AlphaCore from the Rip-A-Verse. If you've got a Rip-A-Verse bias, I don't advise sitting around because these are unbiased reviews. We're going to give you the straight facts. This book was, of course, created by Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett. I don't know how you could have a bias there other than to favor them unconditionally. So stick around, everybody. You'll want to hear exactly what the panel has to say. A lot of takes, a lot of opinions. That's the way we like it here. Spread it around. John Wick says, don't go Christy Noam or Anthony Fauci on dogs. Yeah, well, promise. We won't do that. All of us want to keep our VP selections. So we won't be jumping the shark there in any regards. Good viewership tonight. 19 people. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Oh, counts going up higher and higher. So lots of excitement for this book. Let's get started. Let's see if we can keep that excitement going by bringing in one of the biggest guns that we have. We have, of course, the Road Rage Warrior, Elasmat.
I appreciate Jalapeno's review. That was a well thought out review. No typos, no spelling errors. That was great. I'm inspired.
I don't know. His use of LMAO kind of discredits the.
No, it's not. You got to spell it out. It's Lamau.
Lamau. Mm. Oh, so it's of the Latin.
See, culture. You're a man of culture.
He is, yes. We're all cultured here. Very cultured. Speaking of culture, we also have someone who has none. Welcome, Twitless.
Thanks, as always.
How are you tonight?
Why do I keep coming back?
Because you can't stay away from us, Twitless.
Oh, okay.
You love it.
Stockholm Syndrome.
That's it. I agree with Elasmat.
Speaking of man of love, we have a man that is just quite enough for all of us. Mike S. Miller.
I am Knuff.
You are the most loved man in comics, Mike. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel loved.
Love is love.
Love is not love. Damn it. You were going to start on this, Well Red?
I am starting right from the gate.
I have a cat I would very much like to introduce to Christy Noam if she wants to come by with her rifle.
Horrid takes, as always, Mike. Disavow.
I disavow this cat.
One person you cannot disavow ever for his impeccable takes on everything. Please welcome to the stream, Literature Devil.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for being here. Thank you for classing up the joint. All these dregs. Mistletoad is anxiously waiting for you, Mike. He says, forgive me, who are you and where is Mike? Oh, see? Little sneak peek. There we go. Just the tip. Just the tip of Mike S. Miller. Yes, indeed.
This is why I don't come on your show.
Exactly. This is why you should come on more often. Where else do you get to hang out with people like Literature Devil, Elasmat, and Twitless?
New York.
I mean...
How many dive bars do you have in your area?
Only my basement.
Yes. But once people go to your basement, they never come back out. That's
exactly. As it should be. As it should be.
AlphaCore, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Right to the comic. All right, let's get going. So let me bring up the campaign. I will introduce all of you to the wonder that is AlphaCore. So, of course, it's a Rippaverse release. This was the second book they put out, wasn't it? This came out before ISOM 2?
I thought the ISOM 2 came out first.
Yeah, this is like the third book they put out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Third book, crushing it on numbers, though. So 1.3 million in sales.
Yep.
Wow. Let me ruminate
Which
on that. For a minute.
look, it was half of what ISOM 2 did. ISOM 2 was half of what ISOM 1 did. But, I mean, I totally expected, I prognosticated that like way back because ISOM 1, all of his fans wanted it. They want to support it, support the movement, blah, 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 all that stuff. So everybody did their part. When you got the ISOM 2, you know, figure you're going to get half of those people are like, I already did my thing with ISOM 1. And then AlphaCore, Eric didn't work on it. So half of those people were going to be like, well, I'm here to support Eric, and Eric didn't make this. Right. So I was like, it's probably going to do half. The one that surprised me was Yaira, because I figured we'd just kind of flatline around where AlphaCore's at. But I think Yaira's doing even better.
Yeah.
It's got, I think, yeah, it's got the hot chick appeal.
Yeah.
That always helps.
Onward and upward. So with AlphaCore, though, do you think that it doesn't have a pitch? Like it doesn't have hot chick appeal. It's people in green suits, but it's still doing good numbers, just not as strong as Yaira. There's something about maybe the presentation that didn't stand out, or do you think it's just that?
What are you talking about? I did $1.3 million. Sweet.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. All my points are invalid.
I know
gonna
you are.
Is
onto
this the
something.
way this could have been a bigger success?
Marginally. Could they have done another like maybe 10, 15,000, you know?
Yeah. This
Yeah.
quote unquote failure is did better than
Right.
anything Comicsgate ever produced.
I don't know what you speak of, sir. But yes.
I do wish I could fail this hard. Is definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I would fail all day long. Like
Right.
this.
Yeah.
Give me
Yeah.
some
No.
more failures.
Failing in my hot tub, popping champagne. 13,000 purchasers. That's pretty good numbers.
I think that's the most promising number. Actually, it's not just the sales of what you can get from, because you can have a bunch of whales, right? And
Right.
and your numbers can be high. I think the number that's the most encouraging is the amount of backers.
Yes.
Because that's a very that's where it's higher than I think a lot of what we see in our scene. I don't have we ever seen anything over 10K backers? I don't know if we have.
If you add up all of Ethan's different campaigns for the first book, I think you did over. But that's the thing. It's like with this, I don't know if this is total purchasers like the way Kickstarter does it, where you only get counted as one person. Whereas on Indiegogo, if I buy 3 different items, I get counted as 3 different purchasers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the max, I speculate Ethan did probably around 10 to 12,000 individuals.
I mean, I'm
Because
guessing
just based on like how many repeat customers I got and other people got.
I'm guessing this is individual buyers, because if you add up these cover number counts, it does not equal 13,000. It's
No, it's way
definitely
more than 13,000.
way more.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, so they're probably aggregating that down to individuals, and that's probably 13,000.
That's a really good number. That's really good.
That is really good.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if you look at like book scan numbers for graphic novels, that's a top selling graphic novel.
well, and people are getting their money's worth. It's 96 pages.
It is.
And that's the thing I appreciate about this book is that it did tell a complete story from beginning to end, so there was no cliffhanger.
Right.
All right.
Chuck Dixon and Jill Bennett, lettered by Eric Weathers. So all-star team working on this property. Do any of you know, is it an original creation of Eric's, or do you think that Chuck?
AlphaCore is Eric's characters.
Derek's characters, yeah.
Okay.
They show up in ISOM number 1.
Yes.
Introduced in ISOM.
The target audience for AlphaCore is early teens and up due to comic violence. There's no explicit gore, sexual content, or language in the book.
Yeah,
So-
that's something Chuck did funny. The character he had swearing, he had him bite his tongue first. So his swearing was
Oh, that's
it wasn't proper swearing.
he's like pitch as opposed to
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
There is one. I won't say it's explicitly gory, but there is one scene where a character is burnt to a crisp.
That's true.
It's like
I'll
a
tell you
burning
that, yeah,
crispy
there's nothing
skeleton.
outrightly gratuitous. So
All right, Twitless, I'll give you the honors. Give me the setup.
Uh,
what is AlphaCore all about,
All right.
and why should we care?
Alrighty. So, in a world where people called Excepts possess incredible superpowers, who does law enforcement call when they need extra help? Enter AlphaCore, the response unit that specializes in exceptional threats. Led by the indomitable might of Solar, the lashing whips of Valdez, and the silent efficiency of Braxwell, AlphaCore undertakes a vigil of justice over the skies of Florist Spark, Texas. But threats from without as well as from within are about to shake AlphaCore to its very core. Find out what happens next in AlphaCore, the latest expansion of the Rippaverse.
It's Solari, not Solar.
Messed it up already,
Oh,
Twitless.
well.
Jeez.
One of the guys refers to him as Solar.
No, he doesn't.
Pretty sure he did. I'll double check.
Well, the one thing I'm curious about is, do you need to read ISOM 1 to be able to follow
No.
AlphaCore?
Not really at all. I mean, they kind of feel like different characters here. They feel more serious than someone.
and that's a good point because like I didn't even think about ISOM when I was reading it. The only time I thought about ISOM was just in comparison to the art, which I guess we'll get into later on. But outside of that, yeah, you definitely don't need to know what happens in ISOM, which is good. That's a good thing, which adds to the book's appeal because you can get it and not worry about having to get other books in the Riververse. But again, I'm going too far ahead. So
Yeah, there's no mention of Isom.
Or Yair, I don't think.
Nope.
So
It's very detached from the rest of the universe.
very much a standalone story then. So it sounds like a sandbox that was specifically designed for Chuck and Joe to play in, essentially.
That's a funny image.
I guess it is. All right. Well, so how did they do establishing these characters? Give me a little bit of Chuck Dixon's characterizations for the AlphaCore. Lid Dev, let's start with you.
Well, here they're kind of more funny. They're kind of more Marvel-esque, I would say. In fact, the plot and the characters together, it kind of, to me, it felt like a superhero comedy, like a Marvel-style superhero comedy, because like we have all this like funny shenanigans going on. You know, the villains are just fighting with each other, and Solari is a boomer, which actually is a big plot point towards the end of the book. But I don't know. They were interesting. They had personalities. Had fun. Overall, I thought the book was okay. Overall,
Okay.
so I did like reading about them.
Mm-hmm. Well, what specifically did you like? Did anything in particular stand out for you?
I like their confrontation when they fight with it. Like mainly, it's Valdez and Solari. Like the Braxwell doesn't really speak, even though he can. I thought they were going to wait for him to. I thought like him speaking or something would be a big thing, but no, he just speaks. It's like,
Yeah, you don't even notice it. You just gloss over it.
yeah, I was like, oh, I guess that was him. He just spoke. Okay, I thought that was going to be a big thing. Or, oh my goodness, Braxwell spoke, but no, he just doesn't talk to anyone. I guess he's like really socially awkward. I suppose that's about it. It's like, oh, I guess he just spoke. I thought it was going to be a big deal, but
He's like my son.
I guess like maybe he has like some sort of like social awkwardness going on. That's why he wears the visor all the time. Maybe.
Yeah, Braxwell wasn't very well characterized as well as the other two.
Yeah, I forgot about him. I was really just talking
It's
about
hard to
Valdez and
characterize
Solari.
when you don't say anything.
Yeah.
That's another thing about this book. I had a very big problem with the idea. They mentioned it specifically that we don't use code names. I was like, okay, well, I guess there goes half the fun. I was like, what?
That
we
is
don't use code names.
yeah.
To me, like a superhero code name isn't even given to them. To me, a superhero code name is like the superhero's main. A superhero's main habitat is the big city, the metropolis. And in the metropolis, you have reporters. And usually, to me, like superhero names are kind of like reporter names. Like, I don't know, kind of like in Hannibal Lecter, they give like, oh, the Tooth Fairy, Hannibal the Cannibal. It's like stuff like that. Oh, the Dark Knight, Batman. Oh, that guy's a Superman.
Well, they
Mhm.
they
I
had
feel
a
like they kind of
perfect.
have to have that.
Well, they also had a perfect way to. They had a perfect setup to give them that because they're kind of like paramilitary, and you have like call signs and nicknames and so like and I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
kind
why
of
Lone Star's name is Lone Star, because he's from Texas and he got that name in the military. They
right.
just
So like
called him Lone Star.
so it's perfectly fine for character like people in the military will like give each other nicknames and such. So it's totally fine for them to have the superhero names, and you actually have a decent setup for that. So I don't see why they couldn't lean into that more. And yeah, I goofed. It's totally Solari. That's my bad.
It's Solari. It's a. I think it is supposed to have to do with solar, but it's Solari because so he's I guess a little Italian.
Yeah.
Sounds a little Italian.
Solari, hey, come save me. Hey. You know what? This piece of art, Joe Bennett did a great job on the pencils in this book. I have qualms with the inking and the finishing in certain parts of it, but this panel kind of irritates me because of the bag. Because it's like you're covering the key point is that he's wearing a suicide vest.
Ooh, good point.
I don't
Back off, and we both go up. I'm like, all he has is a gun, and then you.
I'm ready to die. Like he's ready to die that day.
I can see that, but honestly, I think I liked it more than you only because it sets the stage for the action. Because I thought that one of Isom's biggest weaknesses was the action. It was very poorly staged in those books. Here, the action was really expressive, and this page sets the stage for that.
No, I'm just saying, get rid of that freaking bag in his hand.
He's holding a gun. You're worried about the bag.
He's holding a bag.
He's gonna pull up Corley's brain.
I feel like the vest could at least be lit up, kind of like to signify there's something.
I seriously didn't notice the vest until the next page where he tore it off of him.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this: I do agree with I think the coloring. In some pages it shines, in other pages it's very. The tone is just similar, and it kind of it was very uneasy on my eyes at times because I feel like some things weren't standing out and it should have.
Also, it looks like a bag full of water. I'm still.
Oh my gosh, we moved on from the bag.
I wanted to jump back to Lit Dev's point about characterization because I think there are things that this book does well for characterization, and there's a few things that I think it goofed.
Okay.
So there were Valdez and Solari. Thanks, Mike. Are I think they're pretty well characterized for most of the book, and you get a sense of what their values are. You get a sense of who their characters are. Valdez comes across as very much a straight-laced cop. She doesn't even want the code name, and a chunk of one of her fight scenes is just her Mirandizing the bad guy while she's fighting. And so you get a very distinct sense of her character. Chuck's very good at that. Solari comes across as a kind of a military vet who's tired of being sidelined. Again, this is communicated very, very well by Chuck's writing, and it's communicated in a way that makes you sympathize or empathize with his character, which is also good. So that's all well done. Braxel we get almost nothing from, but there's one point that gets really goofed at the climax of the story. Maybe we can get to that later, but I feel like Solari's character got kind of undercut significantly, and I think a little bit of a little revision would have helped that. So in terms of characterization, I think we get a mix, some pretty solid characterization. The villains, not so much. They're mostly just kind of just bad guys.
Which is good. I do like the idea of just being bad guys, just bad guys who are just bad guys and have fun being evil. That was kind of refreshing. But I do like the fact that there's like the moron and then this person who's actually smart and they're just kind of fighting with each other. That's why I took it kind of like a comedy. It's like a comedy story because even the supervillains are kind of goofballs. They have like these got goofball, like Solari's kind of a goofball here in this story. Or like, oh, let me put this drive into the machine that makes it fall out of the sky. Like it's they do have like these confrontations and back and forths are kind of funny. And it does really ring of Chuck Dixon. I've read some of his stuff. I've seen that kind of writing before with him, I believe. And so overall, it did read to me like a superhero comedy with some seriousness in there, like a good one, not like a Marvel. We got to have jingling keys every 5 minutes, but I mean like a old school. I would say like 90s, like buddy cop, like a Lethal Weapon. Like you have like some comedy stuff, and you have some drama stuff. It's kind of a little balance here and there.
Would you call it comedy or just kind of like, action with a sense of humor? Because I don't know if I ever thought comedy here, but I
Well,
definitely
the
saw this
comedy
thing.
to me was like with the villains because they're so over the top goofy. I was like, this is more like a comedy. They're
Yeah,
comedic
I had more
villains.
fun with the villains than I did with the heroes.
They're just like
I think
the
that's like
ladies, like,
where
oh my
arc
god.
really shined was with the villains.
Because the villains were like just the guys like, oh my goodness, I want a massage. Would you just shut up? I'm trying to get a massage here. It's like, you said that this weirdo to go blow up everything. Now, let me go ahead and like she's trying to handle it like down low, and he's like, I'll just send a nuke over to go handle things.
Yeah.
He keeps on sending more people to kill the last person he got to do the last person to kill the last person.
That made me laugh. Like I'm trying to sweep up my mess with a bigger mess, and then she's like, "Let me go ahead and sweep this up with another guy that can do it more finesse." That legitimately made me laugh. I enjoyed that. I found that funny, so that's why it felt really comedic to me. This is more like a comedy superhero story than like a serious one, but with the underlying drama, serious drama underneath it. So
I don't know if I'd personally read it as a comedy, but I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, I want to say comedy. It's comic book exaggeration. I think, like you can read it. You can read the same tone with like an '80s or even a '60s comic. With that
Caffeinated Wolf makes an editorial comment about some of the views expressed. He says the AlphaCore are very explicitly not traditional superheroes. They're a state-endorsed subdivision of the Floor Spark Police.
So how is that not a traditional superhero? We have traditional superheroes who like do, you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's
Well, traditionally superheroes are more vigilantes.
I know they are, but we have those exceptions. There are those notable exceptions in mainstream. So I don't. And Solari is very much like he has the code name. You can tell he sees himself more that way. He has the cape. I'm not sure if I buy.
Yeah, I would have liked some like background information and whatnot because it does seem like it's like someone who used to be a superhero before they like clamped down on superheroism in this world, and this is sort of
I feel like there was a conflict between
Incredibles
Solari
world
and
where it's like if you're going to be a superhero, you have to do it for the state, that type of thing. Basically, they've licensed all the guns.
they're tyrants. I didn't know that.
That kind of confused the whole Texas
Right.
spirit.
By the way, I'm just on the art stuff until we get to the inking stuff. I'm just going to freaking nitpick.
Okay.
But in that page, go to the right. Get off the butt.
I'm trying to chase away your audience from your channel, Mike.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't know how to say this politely. He has no male parts, and the muscles coming from his crotch. That's not how muscles go.
Try this in, Mike.
I mean, that was a whole big thing, by the way, in
It should be going
the
from
Adam
his
West
hip.
Batman. They got in trouble for the bulges. So
Mike wants his superheroes bulgy.
Mike,
No,
why did you bring up the genitalia? I mean, come on.
The dude's got a vagina. Come on. What the hell?
it's important for men to have bulges. Okay, you should see my comic. Let me.
I had more of a
Yeah,
problem.
you shouldn't see Mike, but his comics definitely.
I had more of a problem with how Bennett drew faces. I thought some of them were really wonky.
No. You can't. I really think that's the inkers.
You think?
I've actually got a few pages of Joe's pencils that Chuck sent me. If you want to.
You think so? The inkers are really.
So let me grab them.
No, that'd be helpful. There was a lot of
pencils-
anchors on this book.
Joe's pencils are what you'd consider loose pencils. Like they're not like, crazy tight, just trace everything I did kind of pencils. So hold on, let me see if I can. All right. Present share screen.
The audience appreciates you pointing out the essentials in this book,
Oh, you're
Mike.
welcome.
So,
Yeah, I gotta say, I wasn't prepared for that review of that page.
yeah.
Next time, give
No,
give
he
your,
does it. He does it the whole freaking book. It's like the men have no.
next time, give your
Nothing.
superheroes bulges, like
This
giant, veiny.
I mean, you
pulsating...
don't have to do that, but you have to have some room in there to move.
AlphaCore, sponsored by.
It's very
Camel.
ironic that you're talking about bulges when we're both Ken.
On contrast, there was a page where Valdez's ass was sticking out. It was very nice.
That's right. They're Ken dolls. He draws Ken dolls.
Ken dolls.
Show my
Ken dolls
screen.
down
Show
there.
my screen, dude.
Nothing's coming up. Black.
He's just
Yeah,
Ken.
So you can see. I mean, look how like these look like.
I don't
ton
see
of-
anything.
It's taken a
Like-
second for your screen to
It's on the
load.
screen. It's on the screen for me.
Not for me.
Did you pay your internet bill, Mike?
What the hell?
Jeez,
I
Mike.
don't see it.
That's weird. All right, let me try it. Let me go. Stop. Present. Share. Window.
Mm-hmm.
How's that?
Yeah. Call tech support. Take your time.
I can
It's
see
not
it
like
now.
we're live or anything.
Whatever is on screen.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, you
Totally.
see it
Are you
now?
loading a photo file?
There it is.
Oh,
There it is.
here
There
we
it
go.
is.
We got
There
it.
it is.
Okay,
All right.
Okay, there we go.
So you can see I mean, like everything's there that has to be there. But if you're not a good inker, and I went through and I looked up all the inkers that are in this book, and most of these guys are actually really good inkers. Somewhere in the middle of the book. And look, Jim Lee says this thing where he says, when he gets a script, he does the first page and he does the last page because those have to be really good. And then if I have to call it in the middle, then it doesn't really matter. And I kind of feel like that's what happened where they put the best inkers in the front and the back. And then like the assistants were sort of filling in on because some of those, look how loose these pencils are. This looks like a ton of fun to ink, but I would consider it doing finishes on this, not inks. And you need a really good inker who knows how to draw himself in order to work from pencils of this looseness.
That's interesting. And I did notice it was weird because when I did look at the credits page, I've not seen a book lately that has that many inkers attached. There was the list just kept going on and on and on.
Oh, that's not the right one.
It's taking a while to refresh too, so keep that in mind, Mike.
Oh. Yeah, so this is the only pages I got for Joe's pencils. I think his pencils are everything you need is there if you've got a great inker. So I wouldn't blame Joe for that, unless towards the middle he got rushed and he just started getting looser and looser and looser. This is a possibility. I haven't seen the pencils and I can't say for sure, but I would probably, in my gut, I would lay the failures that are in the book at the feet of the inkers or the finishers.
Interesting.
Okay.
Since we're on art, I will say the issue that I can definitely I think attribute to Bennett is I'm not the biggest fan of the page and panel layouts. I think that in superhero comics we're forgetting the rich history of just being able to do some very compositional things with the art. And Mike, one of the pages that comes to mind is one of your Lone Star pages where you're having the fight scene just kind of go across the spread. And this AlphaCore was just very much, it was like a very cinematic, like this panel is this frame from what would have been on TV. And then it's just squares most of the way through.
It does have a storyboard feel to it. I see what you're saying. I felt that as I was reading it, and I didn't have a problem, more or less, except for one sequence where there was a fight in the bank, and then the fight with Valdez and that other guy. I think it was Elgin. It was his name, and it was confusing the transition back and forth. That was the only real problem I had with the paneling there.
Okay, one thing I took me by surprise here is how Valdez speaks to her commanding officer. She just yells at him. I'm like, wait a minute, she's not supposed to do that. That's how.
Yeah, but she yells at everybody.
See, that's a good point, and I have to disagree with Footless on that because I didn't think Valdez was a good character. I didn't particularly care for her. She was like
She's
the
not a
usual
likable character.
strong independent woman trope that annoys the crap out of me.
Her relationship with Wilkins, though, brings out another side to her, and it brings out a side that she ends up respecting him for as they continue on. So, like, I understand in those interchanges she's a little grating, but it's that relationship with Wilkins, the kind of just beat cop basically that she's with later on, where you get to see another side to her, and she develops over the course of the story. I appreciated that.
I thought
Actually that's what they should have expanded on.
Yeah, I agree with that. They should have expanded more.
Yeah, they should have spent more time with Wilkins. Also, that word balloon chopping right into her head is a freaking unforgivable sin.
But I do know that the thing is, why is she screaming at her commanding officer? But then again, it also does fit with the tone of the comic, which to me felt comedic. So a little bit, we have a little bit like Marvel style, like why'd you insist on the cape? Wop wop, that sort of stuff. That Marvel kind of thing, where they argue about minutia and stuff. Where like, like in Black Widow, where they talk about, oh, let me see the superhero landing. They kind of joke about the superhero landing thing, like a trope, like they did in Deadpool. It's kind of like one of those arguments.
No capes.
So, yeah, like no capes, that sort of thing. So I was like, at first I was like, why is she yelling at her commanding officer? But then I was like, it kind of fits with the tone of the comic, where it does feel a little more comedic Marvel style.
Okay, here's another thing that irritated me, and I apologize. This is all nitpicky stuff, but you see the lens flares, right?
At the top left-hand corner of
He
the
does
panel.
lens flares all over the place, but it's completely inconsistent. Sometimes they're in the background, sometimes they'll go over the characters, and it's like, pick one or the other, and you'll have it on the same panel.
Is that a penciler or a colorist thing?
That's the penciler. Or the inker. I don't know. I didn't see the pencils. But I know, I mean, I'm looking at the pencils. Joe did the lens flares on this, but I don't think he did. Yeah, you can't see it. You can't see. I don't have any of the pages where.
Are you saying like, so like in the bottom, so in the top
You'll
left hand
see
corner
as we go through it, you'll see it's like one will be, it's because a lens flare is supposed to go over everything because it's a light, right? So it supersedes all of the art, right? That's why it's like it'll in the Star Trek movies, you'll see a lens flare just go across everybody's face, right? But if it's in the background, I mean, that's forgivable, but pick one or the other, because when he does both on the same panel, that's when it gets like super weird and awkward. And again, nitpicky, but whatever.
If you read The Art of Joe Bennett, AlphaCore, you'll know that Joe deliberately takes inspiration for his layouts from many action films.
Well, maybe in the splashes, and that's fine. It's just like I said, the composition on the spread just is. Look at that. That's just square, 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 rectangle, and like in comics, we can do so much more with that. And I always want to encourage what the language of comics can do. Well, it's just
there you go, something like that.
I mean, like again, that's still one just giant rectangle.
Look at that foot, lower left corner.
Well, it's interesting because I just picked up today at the bookstore. I picked up Claremont and Miller's Wolverine, and one of the first pages, he has two panels that are like they don't take up the entire page, and I thought it was an interesting composition right there because it allows the eyes to focus on the panels, whereas in one page it's so busy that you tend to overlook the paneling because it's so basic because of the shapes. So
right, you can use more negative space, which is
right, exactly.
Yeah, which I think is something that we've started to lose by drawing back and making the comic book page kind of like a movie screen. We gain a larger view of the action, but we lose what you can do with negative space, which I think is something that's, again, language of comics. I think we can do more with.
Private One points out this whole book is way too saturated. It is. You can't have all these different colors at high saturation. You have to it's color theory stuff, but yeah,
that's my only real gripe with the art is the oversaturation.
Yeah.
Yep, we did review ISOM 1, so you guys can definitely check that out on the channel. All right, so Literature Devil mentioned several times, and I wanted to know if it's a consensus on the panel. Is it an action comedy, a comedic action story? What is everybody else's take of the weight of this, the tone of this story?
I mean, it has B-movie action feel, so I didn't take it seriously. It just came out as a fun adventure story, my gripes aside.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it legitimately made me laugh. So I was like, it was, and not in a bad way either. Like, oh, that's so stupid. It made me laugh because the situations that happen, like I mentioned with the conflicting villains and how one is, they're like, I want to do this, but I want to do it this way, and then Solari and Valdez kind of having their quips back and forth, their Marvel style quips, like you wanted a cape. Well, yeah, well, you signed autographs. So that sort of thing. So I was like, oh, well, this is clearly not as serious as I thought it was going to be. This is going to be more comedic, a little bit.
But were there any serious tones to it?
Oh yeah, towards the end, especially towards the end there. So it felt more like a Lethal Weapon to me. That not like a complete comedy or farce like a Super Troopers. It was more like a Lethal Weapon, like a nice balance like that, like something from the 90s or early 2000s.
I still again, this is me nitpicking. I still disagree with classifying it as a comedy. I just think that it's a action story with a strong sense of humor.
Yeah, I could take that,
and that's. But again, that's kind of splitting hairs on it. But it definitely is trying to have a sense of humor, which I think is good. I think if they had tried to. This is not trying to be Watchmen. This is not trying to
No.
be anything like that. It's trying to be escapist entertainment that you can enjoy. I think Chuck says that kind of at the end. That's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that at the end, like my gripes with Valdez aside, they're people that they're trying to do good. They're not. It's not the construction of the hero. They really are trying to do good.
There is one, like I said, towards the end, there's one moment that I think really kind of undercuts things a bit. But the overall thrust of it is straightforward. Super cops essentially trying to make a difference in the city.
Well, give me a sense of the arc. What exactly happens within the plot that gives it a little bit of weight, that it doesn't just have the comedic sense all through the story? Are there any urgent events that basically take you into a bit more of a serious territory?
So the main thrust of it is at the very beginning of what you saw. You have the terrorist, right? With the vest, with the bag, and they're basically they're trying to catch whoever's behind that, and that kind of gets them into this web of conspiracy. And that's where I think Chuck likes to do the sort of police lethal weapon kind of style thing, and so they're trying to uncover this conspiracy. Meanwhile, the bad guys, who are just like delighting in being evil, are trying to cover up that conspiracy in a way that just makes a bigger mess. And that's basically what the overall arc is you have AlphaCore uncovering leads and chasing behind the villains who are trying to cover up their evil deeds.
It's essentially a superhero cop story then, exactly like Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah.
I think Colonel's right. I think the villains were more interesting than the heroes. And I think that's, I don't know if it's just trying to do too much. I mean, I just feel like we could have, like with the kid, right? What's his name? Wilson or Wilcox? Whatever. Wilkins. I really think they should have spent a few pages with him and her developing, I mean, not all in one freaking batch, right? Diplomatic community. Yeah. But
I did feel they could have expended more on Wilkins, because I think at the end,
I wanted to know the characters more. It felt like in issue 3, right? It's like the characters have already been, explained, and the characters have already been, you're already familiar with the character, and then you're dropped in the middle of the story. So it's like I feel like we should have had more. I wanted to care about the characters individually more, or at least one of them to focus on specifically in order to follow that character. I know it's hard to do when you're doing multiple character story arcs and stuff, because you have to hit everybody, but it's like you want to take the ride. You want to take the ride of the story with somebody, right? Instead of just switching from character to character to character to beat to beat to beat.
I guess technically this is the third issue, because it did appear technically in ISOM 1 and ISOM 2. And I guess it's counting on us being familiar with those appearances. To get a little bit of the context there.
I would also say that Chuck does the skeleton is there. So in order for us to care about Wilkins at all, we need to have a moment where we get some character moments with him and another main character. And Chuck knows how to construct that skeleton to have setup and payoff. So he totally does that. Yeah. It's just that I completely agree with Mike, though, because when I got to the end, I was like, oh, he's already dying. He's already finishing his arc. And it was like, well,
I want to care about him enough to watch him die.
Exactly, and which means you need more time. So the skeleton's there, but it's not the muscle and skin would have helped us care more, because if you
and that again, I feel like that could have helped expand Valdez's character. I think they could have done more with her, which would have then enhanced Wilkins's.
And that would have been a great place to put some backstory. And it's like, what? Why are you such a witch?
What if the perspective was from Wilkins? I mean, like a Sherlock Holmes Watson scenario where the book is from Watson's perspective, as you watch Sherlock Holmes do all these wacky shenanigans, and then we have an outsider's perspective of watching all three, and one time he has to go with Solari, and one time he has to go with Valdez.
Oh, that would have been
something like that, where he gets, and then we have a perspective of the normie, so he can ask the questions that we need to know and everything, something like that. But Solari and Valdez, they get most of the character development anyway. Braxton might as well be a robot. He doesn't really talk. You don't even know what he wants. Like he trains, I think, once, but that's about it. We don't really get to know much about him. He doesn't speak. He doesn't express any sort of opinions.
Are they trying to do like a Snake Eyes thing with him, or he's
I think so. I
Yeah,
think
but then
so.
they have him talk at the end, just
Yeah,
randomly.
but they just have him talk randomly. I don't know why he doesn't speak. It just like, oh, he doesn't speak for some reason, and then later on he speaks like, oh, I guess he was a jerk. I guess maybe social anxiety. I don't know, because this guy that straight up asks him
I
like who he
honestly
is.
wonder if that was like a word balloon that was supposed to be for somebody else.
'Cause there's a guy who just straight up talks to Braxton or Braxwell and just asks, "Oh yeah, you're Braxwell, right?" And he just flies away. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, there must be something because Brandon Sanderson mentioned this. Okay, you set something up, it's a promise you make, and you have to pay off that promise later. So this guy being
fun.
talked to, Braxwell, it's Braxwell, right? Thanks for the assist, and he just flies away. Like, okay, well that's a setup for something. Apparently, it wasn't. He just didn't want to talk to the guy.
Are they setting up? I'm wondering, to be generous, I'm wondering if they're trying to set up Braxwell to, because like this book is already kind of bursting at the seams with the amount of stuff they cram in it, and was it a thing where Chuck's like, I'm just gonna have to develop this guy later?
It could have been something as simple as like him speaking, which means it's time to get dire or something like he does have social anxiety. But it could have been like a narrative signifier where it's like, okay, it's something really bad is going down, and he's like, it's go time or something like that. It's just, oh wow, Braxton spoke. That's what he does. He speaks only when he needs to. Something like that. But then later on he just speaks. I mean, it's like it kind of ruined it. It's like, why did you just talk here? That was Braxwell. He just spoke for no reason. It was a promise that was squandered, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If it's chock full of things, Caffeinated Wolf mentioned earlier, it's doing a lot of world building. Is that essentially what's happening throughout a lot of the story, though? There's a lot of pieces being set up that are.
but
we should only have the pieces we need for the story.
Yeah.
It's not nearly doing as much as because Ithom was just almost it was so much world building and very little substantive story. AlphaCore is weaving what it's doing with a lot of action. Chuck is very good at what he's experienced veteran. He knows how to weave character beat, action scene, character beats, action scene. So he's doing all of the, like I said, appropriate skeleton. It's just that the skeleton is needs more in order for us to be fully invested.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering if what he was doing with the Wilcox, is it Wilcox? That
Wilcox.
character was sort of a Deus Ex Machina rather than a buildup of like what if I was writing this, I would have, instead of having the chick tell him, you got to exercise that muscle, I would have had her like almost doing a real short Yoda on him. And it's like, oh look, if you can move this much metal, it's it's all in your mind that you can't move this much metal, and have him like shove a car over or something that shows that he can progress to this point. Because at the one point, all he's doing is moving tumblers on a lock, and then suddenly he's stopping a building-sized helicarrier from killing everybody. Right?
After that, I think Solari should be fired after that.
That's what I was. Okay, now that we brought that up, so
Solari, you're out of here. No pension.
At the climax of the story, Solari has a moment where he's and part of his character arc is he's been sidelined and he wants to be at the front. He doesn't want to be sidelined and just be shoved to the background. And so they have a lead, and this lead is potentially risky for them to tackle on their own. And Solari basically pushes for them to tackle the lead on their own. But the way he goes about doing it isn't just hey, I think we can handle this, and it was a risk that didn't pay off. The way they do it is a way that makes him look both ignorant and it makes him look negligent.
I just thought he was a boomer.
But it's more than just a boomer because it's like negligence. It's negligent ignorance, and I don't think that's what Chuck and company were going for, but that's the way that people have, I think, interpreted that move, and it really undercuts Solari's character.
Narrative wise, it just feels like, okay, time for Act 3 to happen. Time for the end plot time to shove this thing in the wall.
It's time for Act 3.
No one would do, no competent person of any styling, no veteran especially, would do that. That's dumb, especially because they left it for them. Oh, look, this is the thing you're trying to get. And here's a piece of thing, like a device they left where, of course, we have to plug it into our computers. And everyone was like, they obviously left it for us. It's obviously a trap. We're not going to plug it into our main system. That'd be stupid. And so I was like, I'm going to just shove this in the wall.
I don't see. I read through it twice, and that part was kind of a sticking point. But I don't think it was. It wasn't obvious that they left it for them, because it was like you had two characters in there trying to get to the thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're like, well, what's so important about this thing that they're trying to disappear it?
Right.
And then that's why they wanted to find it. This is another nitpicky thing, but you remember he wears the glasses, and they're like, why are you wearing the glasses? And he lifts them off, and his eyebrows are burnt off. That's literally the only panel where his eyebrows are burnt off. It's like the inkers didn't read the script.
Oopsie.
Good catch, Mike.
So, but back
I told you I'm going to nitpick, dude. I'm going to nitpick.
KSSS says, when Wellred and I hang out, it's like Lethal Weapon. He's too old for this shit, and I have a death wish because I'm with Wellred. Thank you, KSSS.
That makes sense.
Nice to know you care.
So the thing is that with a little bit of tweaking, I think the scene works the setup works way better. If Solari was like, I'm tired of being sidelined, I know we can handle this, and it's just kind of overconfidence that's their downfall. That's a very classic superhero trope. Superheroes always often are set up through their overconfidence to have a fall.
I would have liked to have seen like everyone else on that screen, because he's like the old man, and then like everyone else should have been like, stop!
What are you doing, you boomer?
You
It's a boomer moment. Like,
they don't even address it until 3 panels later, and she's like, "You're such a techno clown."
That's kind of why I thought it was kind of more of a comedy, because that's just dumb. Like,
he does also they do draw him with a little bit of a derp face too at that. But I like I said, that's the part that lost me in the story. I was really following Solari and his arc up until that point.
It's just the fact that his being a boomer was a plot point that causes Act 3. I was like, okay, well, this is kind of just nonsense. This is and then I recall all the stuff that's happened beforehand. Oh, this is a comedy. That's why I took it as one. At least an action piece with a lot of comedy in it. That as an underlier. It's kind of going to be funny, like a Rush Hour or like a Lethal Weapon. That's why that's just silly.
It broke it for me a bit. I'm sorry. I get it. But for me, I had a problem.
Time for Act to happen.
All the way back to the first act too. The way he handles stuff and just steps in. It's like, what am I supposed to? I'm not going to just sit around and wait for you to call. I'm a freaking. I have gifts and talents, and I don't care about your stupid rules. I'm going to save people's lives.
I like that. That's a good character. I like that. Yeah. I'm on board with that. It's him just derping and being like, what's the worst that could happen? We just have to reboot the computer. And it's like, no one's that stupid. that broke it.
Bro. Yeah, how many people do you know?
Okay.
But I think they told him, we're not doing it because we're not going to jeopardize our systems because we don't know what's in there. It could be like a super virus, whatever it is. And then he's like, who cares? That's what he put in the system. But I do like that personality trait of his in the beginning, where obviously no one is going to take out this bomb man, and then he saves the day. Obviously, no one else is going to. So I was like, "Oh, awesome, great, fantastic! Step in," and then he gets yelled at by the angry commissioner trope, which really sold it to me as Lethal Weapon. But every one of these has angry commissioner. That's my favorite trope in these cop things.
If I was going back and I was doing a rewrite of this to make that scene play better, I would have had him introduce maybe Wilkins or somebody else, where they're talking about how high tech and space age the computer system is, and the antivirus and blah blah blah, and then he would step up with bro told me that this could take care of everything, plop, and then it's like.
That would work. I buy that better. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like this was a slight editing revision thing, and it would have fixed it right up. But as it stands, I think it does undercut Solari's character quite a bit.
Another comment from Caffeinated Wolf. He says Ingrid wanted to get to know Wilkins more, as did we as readers. He sacrificed his life before we got to. That's the tragedy. Wilkins was lost right as we were getting to know him more.
Yeah, I think when he revealed his powers at the end, it was relegated to one big panel. And I'm like, well, that's it. I feel like it should have had more. There should have been more of an impact with the revelation and then saving the day. And I kind of felt robbed. I will say about Wilkins.
Well, Elasmat knows a thing or two about being robbed.
Hawk, so that's true.
Yes, he is a Pock. Tell me about the villains, guys. Since everybody has praised them universally.
I just thought they were fun. like Litte was saying, he was saying they're funny, but I like their interactions. I felt like a brother sister team. I'm not sure if they were.
And that the guy was like, he just wanted a massage and like just play golf in his office. He's like, I'll just send this giant lava man to handle it. And she's like, no, I'm gonna handle this my way, with finesse and secrecy rather than nuke. So her guys actually get it done, while his guys just cause all the trouble. And it is like these conflicting personalities that get. This is why they have like two different sets of bad guys to take down, and it was pretty interesting. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, she keeps hiring she hires stealthy people who sneak and use have sneaky powers. And he keeps hiring people
Bulldozers.
who freaking bulldozers to just walk in and just kill people, and then now I have to get that guy killed next.
You would use a bulldozer to find a china cup.
I do like the fact that they kept finding that electricity guy by accident. Like they're there to serve a warrant for someone else. He's just staying at her house. And they capture him, take him to jail. But is part. I assume it was part of the plan the entire time. I guess.
Yeah. Because he needed to be there to kill the other guy that they were having do things.
And then it happened a second time where they go after someone else and they find him there too. Like this guy's having a bad day, I guess. But it was very funny to me.
Actually, if you want to go back to that kind of irritated me because nobody knew that this guy could stop bullets in midair. Which, by the way, the bullets he drew actually had the primer still in them, which is always a pet peeve of mine. But the inking on these 2 pages is great. I don't know who did that specifically, but I really dug the inking on this.
What do you like about the inking here? Like, give us.
Oh, just details. It's stylistic and grounded. And
does it capture the Joe Bennett pencils a little bit more effectively?
It does, but it's style. I mean, you have to stylize them because they're so rough, right? But it's the style added to them. It's a great combination.
Wilkins looks so different in that panel and on that page than he looks later. So there's definitely some.
Yeah, but so anyways, when you go back to the first time you see the electrical character, he's literally electrocuting. He's shooting electrical beams, and nobody's shooting him. It's like, shoot the freaking guy.
Yeah, Mike's a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy. So.
It's okay. Okay, I'm going to defend Mike here because this story takes place in Texas.
Yeah, shoot.
If anyone is gonna be fine with law enforcement shooting a villain,
yeah, you're doing them a favor, saving the taxpayer money. So go for it.
I know Checkpoint. The primes don't shoot it. That's what I'm saying. The bullets that were stopped in midair still had the primers on the back of the bullet, which the primer's not on the bullet. The primer's on the casing. This is a constant error that artists that don't know anything about guns do. They'll make the entire bullet and casing fire out of a gun.
Everyone remember that article where they were like, oh, the shooting bullet found nearby. There's a shooting apparently. It was the entire bullet, casing and all hanging out from a fence. It's like, oh yeah, totally. There was a shooting going on. Oh, these lefties.
So does the story set up effectively a part 2? Or does it just wrap up everything?
It just wraps up technically because the bad guys aren't caught. They don't have anything on them, so they have to let them go. But I think they do destroy their airplane, so they have to stay or for a while, I guess, until they get another airplane. But so technically, it is wrapped up, but there is a cliffhanger for part 2.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Lex Luthor moment of the Superman confronting Lex Luthor moment of, I know that you're the bad guy and I can't do anything about it now, but I'll get you at some point. It's not if I get you first. That's kind of the setup.
And was there enough? Sorry, go ahead, Twitless.
I will say the one thing that I have an issue with is I'm glad on the one hand that Chuck and the Rippaverse are trying not to handhold people through their superhero universe, but there's a lot of stuff where I go, I don't know how superpowers work in this universe. And if you don't explain it to me, I don't know that Galvin can stop bullets. I don't know. The villains have their hands glow purple or green. And I still have no idea what that signifies after. Right. Yeah, there's nothing. It's just, okay, that green. Valdez with her green energy whips, I'm still quite unclear as to what.
Which, by the way, her left arm energy whip is clearly wrapping in the wrong direction in this panel. Like I said, nitpicking. but
Clearly.
Mike's like you're like cinema
they're,
sins.
they're
Like, rack 'em
both
up.
they're both
Damn.
wrapping in the same direction, but it's supposed to be one. They wrap in opposite directions because of one's own. Anyways, never mind.
But I have no
These
idea.
are just the things that stick out to me and irritate me. So.
Is that like I know that the last I think panel of this book establishes that she can slice with the energy whips.
Right.
Aside from that, I have no idea what they can do.
She can
And-
grab with them. She grabs the electrical dude by the leg and pulls him on the ground.
Right, but so a rope could do that too, right? So it's like,
Right.
is this like I don't, I have no idea. And
So I would think
I have no
there's
clue.
something along the lines of a or a Green Lantern construct type of whip that
Yeah,
can do
yeah, but-
multiple things.
Yeah, and that's a good point. But like we're just guessing, and that to me, if we're 3 appearances in, and I'm still like really, you know what I mean? Like I've read ISOM 1 in this, and that's a lot of pages to not know what these people's powers are. Solari, you get a little bit more development because I think you get some range for his invulnerability. He says the bullets hurt, but they clearly don't hurt that much. You see him fly and have super strength. They do a pretty good job with him.
His
Braxwell,
eyebrows get burned off for one.
yeah,
panel.
exactly. There you go. His eyebrows aren't super powered. But a lot of these other characters, including the villains, it's basically special effects of coloring, and it's just glowing on the page. And I'm like, glowing on the page is not enough for a comic book reader. Maybe in film you could do better with this, but again, that's why I have like this is comics. Like you have to tell as well as show. So,
I mean, the whole thing with some of the best anime and manga, they hold your hand. So there's nothing really wrong with that. I mean, Death Note knew it had established rules, for example, so they just outright told you the rules and had Light, test things out and explained exactly why he tested things out, and because you needed to know exactly what he was doing and why these things happen and how the rules work, so you can understand what happens afterwards. So yeah, you don't have to hold everyone's hand all the way through, but there are some things that you need to make sure the audience knows, especially if it's important to the tension and the drama and the narrative. Like, okay, we need to know how this stuff works. Okay, so we know how this works. That way we know how the story unfolds and what can and can't be done. So there are times we have to handhold a little bit.
Back to the inking nitpick. Like, okay, you're asking what I like about. Look how the folds in his clothing, they actually work, right? You're bunching up at the shoulder towards the back. You're bunching up at the armpit in the center, and it's folding down, and it's following what Joe Bennett was roughly throwing down, because Joe knows how to fold clothes. Go 2 pages down, or scroll down 2 pages, and you'll see this is a totally different inker who doesn't have a clue how clothes work.
Is it this one you're talking about?
Yeah, look at that guy opening the bathroom door. Right there in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know that guy?
He has no idea how to fold clothes, and he's just trying to translate Joe's pencils into something, and it just doesn't make any sense. It looks like a chicken drumstick or something.
So how should it be folding? Just walk us through a little bit for those in the
All right, so when you're bending, clothes fold. I have to draw this out. They would crunch up where you're bending, right, and they would stretch out where from. I'd have to draw this.
Mike doesn't know clothes as
so-
well as he knows bulges.
No, I know
He's a bulge specialist, not a clothing specialist, guys. Don't put him on the spot.
No, I get it. It's hard. No, I get it.
It's a good position at Marvel. Okay, all right. We bring in the bulge guy. He's coming.
I'm interested in learning. That's just.
But you can say it's like they jump from one inker to the next, and it goes from something that's really great to something that it's like, oh my gosh, this is a freaking jumbled mess.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are saying that it didn't.
Oh my gosh! And then
explain-
scroll down the next page and go to the bottom left panel.
Oh my gosh, is this JDA's ADHD stream? 1 second. You guys are saying it didn't hold your hand enough, but then Jean-Luc says it's too straight ahead and lacked mystery for interest. Can both be true?
Inside elbow, back to the shoulder. Well, in this one.
Well, I mean, if you don't know everything, and there's supposed to be a mystery, then the mystery might not be there, because. Well, actually, this goes back to D&D. Like, I heard some D&D streamers do this, like where the DM will be like, it was Spoonie specifically. where he would run into situations where he would mess up on the lore, and then one of his players would go, that can't be because of XYZ, and then he's like, yeah, weird, isn't it? So if you know some things, then the based on what we know, like oddities create mystery. So if there's like a guy who's he's walking down the street and all of a sudden he's been shot, but there's no signs of bullets. There's not a bullet in there. Like, what happened? Like, did he dig it out? This is why they did with Anton Chigurh, right? In No Country for Old Men. Like, did he get shot? What is that? There's no bullet in there. It doesn't seem like that big a bullet. So they had to come to the conclusion. Oh yeah, it's that little thing. The air suppressor thing. So it's like how cops solve mysteries. They follow like the logic and what pieces are missing in things. So
I think to Jean-Luc's point,
there's another six finger page.
Mike, you're driving me crazy.
Go down. What's the next page down?
Okay.
Down right there on the left. Down, second panel down on the left. She's pulling out the gun. She's got 6 fingers.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Uh-oh.
And the other hand, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh my god. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
fingers.
So we're assuming that's an anchor problem then.
I'm assuming it is. I don't think this is AI. I don't know what that means.
Oh god.
Maybe that's a thumb. It was just not drawn well.
Maybe she's a giant and she's supposed to have 6 fingers on each hand.
Maybe she's an accept and has 6 fingers.
No, I think that's. I think that's a thumb.
Erodimus has
maybe she
a good
is an
comment.
accept with 6 fingers. Let's check all the other panels of her.
All right. Somebody was making a point before Mike derailed the stream.
It's fine. Erodimus has a better one. Which is he has a comment that says, do these Ripper writers not know about flashbacks? Great way to establish superpowers, character histories, etc., without taking so much time away from pacing. You know what? Another thing that's really helpful here, without having to do scenes, is using editor captions. You know, you have little captions or like there's again language of comics stuff. But again, if you're trying to portray a movie screen, the editorial caption that kind of gives you little insights here and there, those things don't communicate as well in the language of film, which is again kind of where I'm like, hey, let's lean more into what comics does, because this is what a comic, because we are reading a comic, as opposed to just doing storyboards for the TV pilot.
Yeah, I think a lot of comic creators have fallen into that trap of treating comics like storyboards. Like, you're supposed to look at a panel and know what's going on without the words. Yeah. I'm like, you can throw a narration here or there.
And I would just like to point out on that bottom left panel, look how thin the wall is. It's like, this is a building. That wall should be pretty thick. And it's like,
oh, you're right. That's cardboard.
Okay, let's start to wrap this up a little bit. I don't know what's going on.
We'd be here all night.
Scroll down to the bottom panel on this page. Look
Mike,
look at how bad that is.
What are you doing?
I mean, look, I give props where there's props. Some of these pages look fantastic, but whoever inked this page should never work in comics again.
All right, walk us through. What's the problem?
Look at it.
Just look at it.
Well, tell us. I'm for those who are learning.
It's got about as much structure as a pile of mashed potatoes.
Like, is it again? Is
and
it
I get it. He's supposed to be broken and falling on the thing, but oh my gosh, it's like, then why is his arm like perfectly straight? It's
okay.
Like, the wrinkles don't make any sense. It's just
was there enough in this issue to warrant a issue 2? Are you guys interested in seeing more?
I would like to see more character development between the three characters. I feel like we need to see more with Solaris' conflict with being the hero versus trying to do what the state expects of him. I also want to see more growth with Valdez. So I think if they can get that down pat, I think I would definitely be on point for an issue 2. Mm-hmm. But if they don't get that down point, I may not be back for an issue 3.
I think it's to be a little more focused. Let's give us a story, and then only world build what we need for the story. Give us only the pieces we need, so we can be more focused. We have more room for growth with the characters and everything. Like, I want to see if Baxwell is really like a jerk, or does he have like crippling social anxiety? Like, why doesn't he talk when people talk to him? Now that that's like, why doesn't fit? That doesn't fit very well. But yeah, so the thing is, we need a little bit more stuff of what we need to know for the mystery. to unfold and for us to feel the tension of the mystery. So we need to know enough so that we know what everyone's capable of, what seems to be the norm, and so that way, if we know what the norm is, then we know what's abnormal when we reach it. This is why you get superstitious mysteries, ghost mysteries. You get the oddities, like that's kind of weird. You get the Sherlock Holmes kind of mystery, like that's kind of weird. How'd that happen? So we need to establish what's the normal, so we see what's abnormal later on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just want to know the characters better. At least one character to focus and take the ride with, and just
More bold.
really good inkers on, because Joe's pencils are great, but dude, trust me, 30 years in the industry, the curse of lackluster inkers, that's why I ink my own stuff, because it happens all the time. It's just you get good pencils, but they're not tiny enough for somebody to trace, and then the inker just freaking demolishes it. But if it was a consistent, some of the inkers he has on here are really good. Just take a little more time on it. Just keep the good inkers on. Focus on one or two characters, and I'd really like to see why the relationships are the way they are. It doesn't have to take over the whole story, but just give us some foundational stuff. So that we understand and we can empathize with one or the other when two people are just at loggerheads, and you're like, well, who am I supposed to side with here? Him because he's a dude, or her because she's a chick? And it's like, because you don't have any idea who they are as characters in order to take that ride with them through the story.
I feel like we're already into final thoughts. So
Yeah.
is that your final thought, Mike?
I don't know. What else you got?
I got Twitless. Twitless, what's your final thought?
All right. I definitely think this is a step up from ISOM, and that tells a tight narrative balanced with page-turning action. I think it's a solid first entry, gives me a satisfying conclusion while leaving me wanting more. Again, one of the biggest issues I've had with a lot of crowdfunded books is that they just don't tell a complete story. This one does, but also leaves room for wanting more. So again, Chuck did a really good job with that. He's a solid craftsman. If ISOM felt like a TV pilot, I think AlphaCore feels like the spin-off show that's able to springboard successfully off of what came beforehand. I think it does a lot of things very pretty well. I don't think it does anything exceptional either. And I think that's okay, because sometimes you just want solid escapist entertainment. My personal recommendations are to refine the things that this book does well and allow for better ways to express that escapist vision, improve the artistic way of representing the action, bolster the iconicity, and refine the characterization. One thing that didn't come up is that even if they're super cops still have badges. They're still they still wear patches. So there's something I think you could pull together what AlphaCore represents and have them wear it on their uniforms or something. And so I think that taking what you've got and making it speak better to what that vision is would be the things that I would want to see improved. And then obviously I agree with a lot of what the panel's saying, more characterization. Definitely.
You know how Lit Dev's always saying that he's a boomer and stuff. Man, if they'd have played up that boomer aspect and treating Valdez like she's a child, because back in my day, a woman knew how to speak to her elders, stuff like that. Sort of take that sort of turn him into Cary Grant, right?
Backhands her.
Yeah.
Shut up, woman.
I didn't say
Valdez.
Sean
Where's my sandwich?
Sometimes you've got to hit the woman. It's all right.
If what was it? Machete. Machete don't text. Kind of that. I don't use cell phone. I don't text. That's demon stuff. I don't use that stuff.
That's witchcraft. You don't know how that stuff works.
Todd goes in. Todd goes in.
Elasmat, final thoughts?
Yeah, overall, I appreciate that it's a solitary story. The action sequences are pretty well done. It was a brisk read. I did enjoy it. I would give it a B-. My criticisms aside, and if you have an issue with the fact that the men don't have bulges, please share my screen. It makes up for it with the apple bottoms in the story. There you go. So,
yeah,
the universe has been saved.
See, Mike, you were so obsessed about the peens, you forgot the booty.
I'm just saying, man, they're Ken dolls.
Priorities, Mike. Priorities. Just saying.
No, the chicks at the pool are great. I mean, just
You wouldn't even notice the men's bulges if you were paying attention to those chicks. I mean,
well, it
they're on
wasn't
the
just
same
that.
page.
It was the direction of the muscle. It's just something I
It
think
was the
Joe kinda
direction where
would
your
know better.
eye was.
AlphaCore, ladies and gentlemen.
Lit Dev, did you want to give a final thought?
I thought it was pretty all right overall. I think it was the best. Well, it's better than ISOM 1, ISOM 2, which I also have. I think I've bought every Rippaverse book so far. I've also bought Yaira, waiting for that to come in. I even said that they should lead with this. Like, this should be the the flagship series, where it's like this is the one that everyone connects to. That we meet the new heroes through AlphaCore instead of through ISOM. And then everyone yelled at me, so I was like, okay, well, never mind.
Actually, you know what? No, you're not wrong about that, because when I was reading it and they was talking about the accepts, I kept thinking, man, if they established ISOM as an accept, then yeah, AlphaCore could have been a good first book.
Yeah, it would have been pretty fun, and especially because there's three of them. They all explore different things, different backgrounds. They all have their own distinct personalities, and I think it'd been really interesting to explore the world of Rippaverse through these characters, especially because they have an incentive to be there because they're cops, they're law enforcement, so they have a reason to go and do things. There's a built-in conflict there, and then also we have everyone is built around the conflict. And I also, by the way, I do listen to everyone else's reviews, everyone. And as far as I can tell, everyone's favorite part of ISOM number 1 was the part where it was Yaira and AlphaCore. When AlphaCore shows up, that's a lot of people's favorite part. So I took that and I took the AlphaCore book, and it's like it being way better than ISOM 1 and 2. Like, maybe this should be the flagship series. And I said that. It's like this, have everyone be met through these characters, and then all the Rippaverse people got mad at me, so I was like, well, I guess whatever. I'll just buy them and talk about them then.
Okay.
Well, maybe they're you're trying to take the sort of Marvel universe tact of where you're introducing Iron Man, and then you're introducing Captain America, then you're introducing
Well,
Thor,
isn't that what it's doing? That's
and
why I've
then
seen
you
it do.
get Avengers, and this is their Avengers.
Which again plays
Well-
into the fact that this being very much envisioned in a cinematic way. And
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of
Rich-
modern comics.
Rich questions all around, guys, and we need answers. We demand answers, and please let me introduce the man who's here to provide them to all of you, Andrew.
Well,
Welcome.
good evening.
Good evening,
Hello.
Andrew.
How are
If all
y'all
of you,
doing?
very good, Andrew. If all of you do not know, I will introduce you quickly. Is the lead editor for the Rippaverse, one of the lead editors.
Great.
So,
The Saskas are also lead editors.
oh, nice. So he is here to answer all of your world building, characterization, shared universe, etc.
And so much as I can. NDA.
Quest NDA, of course.
Yeah, we've
Yeah,
never
so-
met before. I've never seen this guy. Not
Oh
once,
yeah,
ever.
I've never seen Live Dead before, ever in my life.
Not once.
So I take it you two know each other and stream together?
We've
possibly?
been on several streams together over the last several
Ah.
years. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's a fairly regular guest on my Tuesday night show over on World Class Bullshitters, the High Council.
Always a lot of
Nice.
fun.
Yeah. Well,
Last time I was there, we're trying to make a movie about Star Wars Beer Fest, which was awesome. And
I
I wanted
mean-
to expand more.
I'll drink some good beer while watching good Star Wars, aka the first 6 films.
Like the first 3 movies.
That is all.
That's it.
Or I think it is. No, why would I bother saying first 6? It's just 6, right?
Yeah, it's like this.
Oh, I thought you said first 3 because
I'm not playing that game because then there are people that are just like there are comic book fans who only believe in the golden age characterizations of characters, which is ludicrous to me. There are people that don't believe in Star Wars past Star Wars, like before it was even recalled,
Just the movie.
rebranded New Hope, like just Star Wars. Like they don't even acknowledge Empire or Return of the Jedi or anything else. They're just like, no, it's just Star Wars. It's like, okay, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah, but
That's
the
fine.
prequels
But I
legitimate.
like a little bit more.
You're young.
AlphaCore, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So actually, let me start with a loaded question. I guess give us the grand vision of Rippaverse. What
You
world?
weren't kidding when you said loaded. Jesus.
Give us
I know.
everything.
There's a lot to unpack there, but I figure you're the man.
Next
You're the
3
man
hours.
to explain it as
3
succinctly
hours,
as possible.
3 consecutive days.
You
Jeez.
have 30 seconds, sir. Go.
30 seconds. Well, all right. Well, here's the thing. Look, I've heard all of y'all's criticisms, all y'all's critiques, and I do want to say I appreciate you guys reading the book, supporting the Rippaverse. Whether you wound up super enjoying the book or it was kind of meh for you, or maybe you didn't like it, whether we're talking about ISOM 1, 2, or AlphaCore. I do sincerely appreciate the support for us regardless. And taking the time. A lot of people miss the point of that. Like taking the time to do a thoughtful review on something, whether it's positive or negative. That's valuable, and we appreciate
you.
that. So thank you for doing that. That said, the vision for the Rippaverse. Wow, that's that's a you said loaded question, and you kind of undersold that a little bit.
Oh,
Look,
I do that.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say we're comic book guys. Mike, you've drawn a comic book or two, right? Lit, you've read a comic book or two.
I read a couple things before, yeah.
You know, kind of an indie guy. You might know a thing or three. DC and Marvel let us down for a long time. For like about 99.5% of the books that they were pumping out. There's a gem here and there, right? But we decided, as comic book fans over at the Rippaverse, like, hey, you know what? Let's take a crack at building our own universe. That takes a lot of time, and it's a learning process along the way. There was one of the big critiques of ISOM 1 was that there was too much world building, not enough story. Okay, fair enough. I would say to those people, you have clearly never been a part of the fantasy novel scene at all, because sometimes you got to wait years and years and years for any sort of payoff on anything. However, I understand wanting to have things more fast-paced. AlphaCore was that book. AlphaCore was Chuck Dixon being Chuck Dixon. It was him being like, all right, we're gonna make something everything that ISOM wasn't. And that's not meant to be a negative against ISOM. That it's a completely different style of storytelling. It's fast-paced. It's a little more quippy. It's got, as Lit and a couple of you guys were saying earlier throughout the course of the stream, it's a little more comedic. I wouldn't call it a comedy. However, it definitely has that lighter tone to it throughout most of the book, because it's meant to just be a fun, fast-paced comic book. Whereas ISOM's a little more grounded, a little more gritty. It's building a lot. ISOM 3's got a lot going on. That's our longest book yet by a large margin, actually. There's a lot going on in that book and a lot of things wrapped up. And I will say, this is something that we're committed to at the Rippaverse, and obviously the fans, the people who are supporting us release to release, whether it's they're just buying ISOM or they're buying them all, whatever it is, they'll be the ones to determine whether or not we succeed or fail in this endeavor. But we're trying to make each subsequent release better than the last. A lot of people liked ISOM 2 better than they liked the first one. I personally feel that they're going to have that same sentiment with ISOM 3. The point of the Rippaverse right now is to try and build out this expansive, ever-growing universe with new characters. Sometimes we're going to have characters that are going to maybe remind you of characters you're already familiar with. Yeah, sometimes that's going to be purposeful. How many times have you talked to a friend or a family member and said, "Hey, I know you like this thing. Have you checked this out?" That's marketing. That's interpersonal marketing. And we're trying to replicate that to some degree. There's a lot of world building to be done. We're going to learn a lot of things along the way. We've learned a lot of things on the business side along the way in terms of, how to, make fulfillment more efficient, things like that. But in terms of storytelling, look, this is why we're bringing in legends. This is why we've got people are like, oh, AlphaCore was written better than ISOM 1 and 2. Oh my God. It's like Chuck Dixon's been writing freaking comic books longer than Eric.
Yeah.
Wow.
Obvious.
I had no idea that was going to be
You mean longer than Eric's been alive?
Yeah. No shit. Like, this should not come as a surprise. And I say that as somebody who I love Eric as a friend, as a boss, and I also enjoy ISOM 1 and 2. But I've been reading Chuck's comic books since I was still in single digits. The dude's been at it forever. And Mike Barron even longer. Guys, Gooding is such a good book. This is a character that had, half a dozen pages in ISOM 2. And Mike Barron, being the legend and master of the craft that he is, he took that and just did a masterclass on how to write a fantastic comic book. We're bringing in people that are just going to elevate us more and more. And Eric is improving along the way even more so. ISOM 3, far and away, his best work. It's also Cliff's best work. And here's the thing. I see y'all in the comments. I see people on Twitter. I'm not blind. People have different tastes in comic book art. There are a lot of comic books out there that are lauded as some of the best books ever, and I cannot stand the art. The story might be fantastic, but the art just does not do it for me. Sometimes vice versa. Shoot, I own a copy. My God in heaven. I own a copy of All-Star Batman and Robin. That book is awful. But it's also cover-to-cover Jim Lee art. So
it is really good art. It's terrible, though.
It's freaking Frank Miller on a bender of all sorts of things at once is what it is. But the art is just like, I'll flip through it and I'll be like,
the goddamn Batman.
I'm not reading that. I'm not reading that. I'm not reading that. But gosh, that panel's gorgeous, right?
I have a really odd obsession with Robin being age 12. It was kind of weird.
I'm not gonna try and unpack that. But there are different tastes for everybody, guys. And
yeah, I can't stand Todd McFarlane. Not as a person, as an artist.
No, and that's fair. I grew up with Todd's Spider-Man. I have a special place in my heart for it, but I have a lot of friends that do not like his at all. And I get it. I even as a fan of his, both as a businessman and as an artist, like especially in his earlier Spidey stuff, I've got some issues with like his faces. It's like, all right, you're really good right now with the masks covering faces, but as soon as the mask's off, it's like, that's not an actual woman, is that? Right? And so that's a thing, right? Everybody's got preferences. But we're going to keep building. We're going to keep improving. And we've got a lot down the pipeline right now. Like, I promise you. Eric's already mentioned that Chuck and Joe are working on multiple books right now. There's a lot coming down the pipeline. And I'm excited because Chuck's excited. Chuck Dixon being excited for what he's getting to build here excites me.
That's my... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Can I just ping off of that a little bit? In which vision do you identify more with? The comic book for comic book aficionado kind of a crowd, or the sort of like this sort of a big bombastic cinematic vision?
Well, you're gonna have to actually hold. I don't like interrupting people because I don't like being interrupted. I don't want to rewind real quick on that.
Sure.
So when you say comic book aficionado, are you just talking about the medium, or are you talking about people who are familiar with franchises that have 60, 70, 80 years of history built in, and that's what they're used to?
So I mean, kind of like language of comics kind of stuff, where it's like where we're looking at a comic book and just what a comic book can do specifically in its form and structure, or
comic books can do a lot of things.
Yes. So I guess what I'm saying is that vision-wise for Rippaverse, is Rippaverse embracing more of the cinematic feel to it? Is that kind of what you see, or is it the again, you brought up Todd McFarlane, right? McFarlane is someone who really leans into at times just like this is not just a story. I'm doing this as an art piece. Sure. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing. And you can lean in either direction. And I'm not saying that one is right or one is wrong. I'm just saying for people who are peeking their head into the Rippaverse, which is the one that resonates?
Well, to that, I will respond with one of my favorite Tony Stark lines from the MCU back before it was trash. Is it too much to ask for both? Because the great thing about having a comic book universe and not just, putting out multiple comics and saying it's part of the same universe when really it's not. It's like, okay, no, you're just you're writing multiple comic books and they're not connected like at all. The great thing about having an interconnected universe is you have the option of telling different types of stories, taking different approaches. That's going to be a natural outcome when you have writers with different styles. Eric has a completely different style from Chuck, who has a completely different style from Mike, who has a completely different style from the Saskas, who has a completely different style from whoever else is going to join our growing stable. Some people are going to tell stories that are in that more cinematic approach, right? And then others are going to have a more grounded, very earthy, very, not fantastical style, more of a slow burn. And then others are going to have something, maybe it's a little bit in between. And that's fantastic because, look, and I say this as somebody, I've been a fan of DC and Marvel comics since I was in single digits. My first comic books that I ever held in my hand, as far as superhero comic books, were The Flash Zero and Man of Steel Zero, Beginning of Tomorrow, that came out right after 0 Hour Crisis on Time. Not DC's best event in their history. But I never bought every single book that either publisher was putting out because some characters jived with me, some didn't. Some writers, their styles jived with me, others didn't. Like, there are writers that have been on The Flash. The Flash is my favorite superhero of all time, specifically Wally West. Some writers have written him in a fantastic way for me and what I'm looking for from the character. Others have not. And I've been like, do I really want to keep going with this? Like, yes, this is my favorite character, but I'm not really feeling the story right now because I don't feel the art or I don't feel the writing or whatever, combination of the two. With an expansive universe, you have that ability to reach a much wider audience because you're going to have those people that maybe they connect with one character, but they don't connect with another. We have this is something that Eric has mentioned before, but I don't think enough times. We have a lot of people whose first Rippaverse book was AlphaCore, or whose first Rippaverse book was Yaira. Maybe ISOM wasn't their speed. We have people who bought ISOM 1 and 2, but they're not necessarily interested in the idea of the Super Cop team. Okay, fair enough. Fine. That's cool. Or they're not interested in the blonde bombshell femme fatale type character, right? All right, fair enough. Totally. That's fine. Like, over at DC, I was reading Green Lantern and Flash and Superman and Teen Titans, but I wasn't reading literally everything, right?
Right. But even when you have a company like there's still something you might be able to boil down. So so if we take like Valiant versus Image, right? Like the classic, the Deathmate crossover where you had like Valiant, which was like camping out, not as much in the flashy art, but camping out in something that I think is similar to Rippaverse, which is when you read the story, every panel is going to matter. Everything connects, and people really just dug into that. Whereas with Image, people were really digging into those splash pages,
Into being illiterate.
Yeah.
Wait, are we talking 90s Image or we
Yes.
Very,
Okay.
Early Image. Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, that 90s Image sold themselves on having the top artists, but it was definitely not on the top writers.
Yeah.
So
Nobody remembers those characters at all.
So that's kind of where I'm getting at there. So like for the Rippaverse vision, like where are you? Where do you and Rippa? Because the impression I got was that you guys were coming at it from a more Valiant kind of idea. That because there's even just the philosophy of continuity that you guys have. So is that fair to say? Are you doing something completely different, or
I guess in order to put it in terms that are relatable with an already pre-existing example, because that's the best you can really do, right? Sometimes is to give people something there's already something that's similar enough. Sure, that's fair enough because continuity is key for us, and I invite people each time. And hey, sure, there are plenty of people that they bought on. I heard it mentioned earlier. I forget who posited this, but there were a lot of people that jumped in on ISOM 1 just because they wanted to support Eric. They're longtime fans of Eric. Eric has a really large following. Maybe a lot of these guys aren't comic book guys, and they just wanted to be like, yeah, totally, I like this guy. Throw him $35 plus shipping. Why the hell not? Right? I got a job. Sure, cool. And then they were like, all right, I got it. Maybe I read it. Maybe I didn't. But I supported the guy on this venture. Cool. I did my part. I'm going to go back to watching his videos, right? There are plenty of people like that. There are also a lot of people there that was the first comic book they ever bought. And they were like, okay, yeah, I'll jump in. We have some of our biggest supporters are guys who they were never gigantic comic book guys, and they were introduced to it through the Rippaverse. And then subsequently through that, they wound up supporting even more indies because of it, whether it was going and supporting Shad's book, you know,
Hey, oh.
or going and supporting. I've got the hardcover in my short box over here. Or you know, whoever else's book. There are a ton of indies out there worth supporting. And these guys got into it because they jumped in on ISOM. And maybe they wound up liking those books more than ISOM. Maybe vice versa. It doesn't really matter to us. The point is we want to continue to grow the health of the indie comic book scene. And so that continuity piece, that's a huge sticking point for us. We have a lot of conversations when scripts come through about, okay, so this fits, this doesn't. This could work if it was tweaked just slightly so that it's in line with everything that came before and everything that's planned after. There's great communication between our writing team right now. And I feel blessed to be in on those conversations to see the collaboration that's happening right now, because you have the Saskas and Chuck and Mike and Eric all communicating between each other and being like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. And then you have, you know, the Saskas being like, oh, I really like that. Can I use that here and do this? And then you got Chuck being like, yeah. And actually that gives me this idea to do this over here. And it's this wonderful collaborative effort that makes you feel like you're part of a team that actually just gives a crap about what they're doing and is trying to figure this shit out along the way. Because it's one thing to come in on a character that is, you know, established with, you know, 50, 60, 70 plus years of history, and you're well read on the character, or you do your due diligence, right? Like any writer worth their salt ought to, which is be like, hey, all right, I was asked to write on this character, or I'm interested in writing in on this character, but I don't actually know jack diddly or squat about this character, so I'm going to do my work. I'm going to do the homework so that I understand the assignment. I'm going to learn about this character. But it's a completely different thing to just start from scratch. And that's a terrifying thing, but it's also an exciting thing because we get to have those conversations. Well, what does this look like? What is this going to look like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Where are these characters going to go? Some of our writers are already thinking that far ahead in terms of like, okay, so the characters in space A right now, but what are they going to look like when they're in space G? Right? It's the coolest thing to be a part of, this growing, expanding universe. And
So
it's
the
something.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I'm
No,
sorry.
you're good.
Yeah. So the creators that come in, are they following a skeletal framework that's already been established, or are they also defining their own origins for these characters and maybe contributing new characters?
So that really depends. So, like in the case of Chuck Dixon is a perfect example, because Eric created the AlphaCore. Those were his characters in terms of the person who conceptualized them, our fantastic concept artist Marcos Rios. He drew them in terms of their first designs. But Eric then handed those characters over to Chuck and had enough faith in Chuck to say, okay, here's their universe Bible entries. Because in terms of what you were just saying, that framework, that skeletal structure, we have a universe Bible with entries for every currently existing character, as well as characters that have already been created and approved, but haven't necessarily appeared yet. That breaks down at least some of the basics, right? In terms of like, all right, this is who this character is, at least at their core. This is who they're not. This is what they can do, at least for now. Here's what they can't do, weaknesses, things like that. He handed that over to Chuck and said, all right, do your thing. And then Chuck got to play. He got to take the characters and write them within the context of who they were designed to be, and then just kind of have fun with it. And that's why AlphaCore, despite there were a lot of criticisms, a lot of nitpicks as well, some of which I agree with. But one thing that most people will agree on when it comes to AlphaCore, it was just a fun comic book. And I don't like how often. Okay, so there's a subset of the internet that likes to use fun as the excuse for something being bad. That's not what this is. It's Chuck Dixon. I'm sorry. If you think you're a better writer than Chuck Dixon, I don't know how to help you. You should find some help yourself.
But giving Chuck also. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm still getting my cues on when I went to interrupt.
No.
I apologize.
Interject by all means, please.
Great.
This is your platform. You allowed me to come into your home. I'm just the jackass that you let be on the show.
Well, you're the guest. I want to give all due respect, of course. And I'm curious though. So Chuck playing in this sandbox, is there a risk though allowing somebody, with Chuck's ability to have like free reign and just to be able to define some of these archetypes and these heroes in a way that he would see fit that would entertain him? Is there room for entertaining that kind of trajectory?
I'll say this. In fact, I'm going to answer that question with a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pull a Jesus Christ here. Not that that's not meant to be a blasphemy, but he liked doing this all the time. Please don't take offense, Mike.
Mike is just thinking about the bulges.
And well, jeez, picking on Mike. But no, I'll be serious for a second here. Who is Batman to you? What is your vision of Batman? What does Batman look like to you? Is Batman the Dark Knight? Like what is his characterization? What is your picturesque version of Batman?
For me, the visual interpretation, mostly the Norm Brayfogle representation, very dark and mysterious, shadowy.
Okay.
In terms of writing, to be honest, I liked very much Greg Rucka's take on it because he leaned heavily into his detective persona. But each writer decides to emphasize a different aspect of the character, and
Sure.
Grant Morrison's Batman is way different from Rucka's Batman.
Right? Absolutely.
You almost
Tynion's, as is just about anybody else's. Denny O'Neil, all of that. Chuck Dixon. None of those are the Golden Age Batman, right? None of those were the creators of Batman. Sometimes through the natural, organic course of things, readers, and we would all probably give a completely different answer to that same question I just posited. Readers will naturally grab onto one version of a character over another, right? I'm a late 80s baby. I grew up through the 90s. Chuck Dixon's Batman it's kind of my Batman, right? His Robin, it's my Robin. Tim Drake has always been my favorite Robin. I ignore anything that DC has done with him in recent years. I have to, otherwise I cry. So I don't know if risk is I don't know if that's the word that I'd use, honestly, because it's an exciting thing, actually, because Eric is writing ISOM, and he's writing other things, which I cannot say yet. Y'all will learn enough about that soon enough. There's a reason why Eric asked Chuck to write AlphaCore. There's a reason why he handed them over to him, because he trusted Chuck to have them remain who he created to be at their very base core, but he knew that whatever Chuck decided to do outside of that and play with it outside of that was going to be great. And if it's something that he vehemently disagrees with, look, I don't know any of y'all's personal opinions on Eric, and I don't really care to. It's not important to me. However, we can all agree that Eric has a strong personality. He's not the type of person who's going to not tell you what he thinks. So if he thinks that Chuck is taking a character that he created in a direction that is completely antithetical to how he intended them to be, he will let Chuck know. He'll be like, I'm about to tell Chuck Dixon I don't agree with this decision, but he's still going to say it. And maybe Chuck has a rebuttal to that, right? Maybe Chuck has a response that says, well, here's why I went down the path that I did. Right. But that's a conversation that can be had.
So
So
in the
I don't consider that a risk. I consider that having faith in people that have experience and talent that far exceed the sum total of most people in the indie space.
So in the version of AlphaCore, is it very much akin to your example with Batman, where that's Chuck Dixon's AlphaCore? Would you say that's fair?
I think the story that's being told is definitely Chuck Dixon's AlphaCore. However, Chuck did a great job at adhering to how, and this is inside baseball and stuff that, like, until such a time as we release our own version of like the DC or Marvel big old encyclopedias or whatever, like, y'all won't like know some of the super minutia inside baseball stuff. But Chuck adhered to how those characters were created, as well as their interpersonal relationships, at least at like the very base level that Eric had hinted at and decided on. And then he just kind of built upon it. Like, everything that Chuck did in that book had purpose. And it's fantastic to watch. I say that as somebody who is so familiar with Chuck Dixon's work. I see how he very deliberate. It's so easy writing team books. I'm not jealous of people who write team books, because that writing a good character
That's a
or a
lot.
unique character just on its own is difficult. That takes talent. That takes a lot of time. You usually don't get it in the first hit. You got to build on that, right? In order to evolve that character. A lot of times it's a learning process. You're like, all right, you're the writer themselves. You're learning who this character is as you go. Well, people that are writing team books have to do that with multiple characters at the same time. And Chuck is just so adept at that. He made every single one of those characters completely distinct from another. I heard a lot of the comments regarding Braxwell. Like, y'all are going to get more Braxwell. Don't worry. Y'all are going to get a lot more Braxwell in the
Okay,
coming
but
months.
legitimately, was the word balloon an accident?
Which one?
The one thing he says.
The one thing he says at the very end of the book?
Yeah.
No, that was deliberate.
I mean, it's just like so nonchalant and like it.
It
Like,
seems that way until, okay, I'm going to put myself in your
I
shoes.
mean, always bet your
and,
ass.
and that's, I'm going to put myself in your shoes, and I can understand how that would be an impression that somebody could grab from that. I will say that once these other coming releases drop that may or may not have Braxwell in them, and you get a little bit more of his character, a little bit more of his presence, you're going to see why that line, not the words themselves, but the situation in which he said them, actually has more weight to it than just at face value.
Oh, he hates cops.
That was not on.
He hates cops.
He is one. Be self-hating. A self-hating
Well,
black
that would be the
person. We
first
don't need
thing,
that.
the first self-hating anything anywhere, you know.
Yeah, no, trust me on that. Like, Chuck didn't do that for no reason. He did not do that for no reason. However, I will relent that I could see how somebody could, at face value, see that line and be like, well, wait, like, he hasn't said shit, like,
For
in
3
this-
books.
Yeah, in 3 books, and this was the thing that he said. You will see.
Okay.
I can again, I'm
I'll take
relating and empathizing.
So what is it like editing a Chuck Dixon script? Is there like is there an anxiety where it's like, how exactly do I correct the master here? Who am I to do this? Yeah.
There's only one thing, or at least I thought there was only one thing on this planet that terrified me, and that was sharks. I guess there are two, and the other thing is editing a Chuck Dixon script.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, when I was asked and brought on to editorial for AlphaCore, just to make sure there was, because look, like there was stuff that was missed in ISOM 1 and 2, and that was on us. You know, things that could have been caught, things that could have been shot, could have been caught, and you know, they weren't. And
So who
we
is
decided
the
we're going to do better.
six-fingered girl?
The six. And look, as far as that goes, I am not the art editor.
Oh, did you just throw Kanan under the bus?
Kanan was not our art editor for AlphaCore.
But there were multiple inkers, right? Like how often?
There were several
they switch?
inkers. There were several inkers. I can't comment on who, you know, inked which particular page on that. But I mean, we can look at the panel and being like, yeah, that looks like 6 fingers. So that was an error. It's an error. Mistakes happen. All we can do is recognize that and be like, okay, so this is why we need to pay extra attention moving forward on this thing. That's why AlphaCore was the most buttoned up book in terms of the script. That's why it's just going to keep improving moving forward with each successive release. That's our goal. We will never hold ourselves to a point of perfection, because we could think we got everything perfect, every single panel, not a single error, every single word balloon. And you know what? Shit, there should have been a comma there, right? Like that's going to be a thing. That happens all the time. But we're going to continue to try our best and be as diligent as we can to make sure these books are as buttoned up as possible. For one, because we have fans that are giving us their hard-earned money for these, and they should reasonably expect a button-up final product. We should also hold ourselves to that standard, because we want to present a buttoned-up final product for ourselves, and then the creatives, they should want the thing that they created to be presented in the best possible way it can be, right?
Can you speak to why there were multiple inkers?
Oh, that's just that's a time management thing, dude.
Yeah.
But you need to get rid of the bad ink, because 4 out of 5 pages were great, but those other pages, those.
Mike wants to be art editor, by the way.
No, Kanan can handle it. Just
sorry,
fine.
Mike. Kanan's got this. I do appreciate you. But
I got a
Kanan's
question.
got this.
I have a follow-up question on that, though. Not the inkers specifically, but I think there's sometimes, and I think it's worked this way historically at times in the past, but there's been different ways of producing comics and coordinating all those efforts. I think some of the times there's been more of an assembly line approach to comic book production.
That's American comics, Twitless.
Right. I'm just saying that, like, there's also different ways of running that assembly line, and so I guess what I'm asking is when it comes to the Ripperverse, and you kind of mentioned how the writers' room collaboration went, but overall from your editing standpoint, how does because I know as an editor you're not just proofreading. I know that oftentimes editors they're coordinators, they're producers. Their roles are more than just taking a look at the commas. And so what is it like? What is the Ripperverse like in terms of that coordination and collaboration? Is it, I'm assuming it's not just purely mechanically assembly line.
No, it's you're absolutely right. And that's actually something that's been an evolving thing, to be fair. So that's something where with AlphaCore, it was far more, okay, let's hyper focus on, because if you're going to properly and consistently correct an issue, sometimes you got to tackle it one at a time. The one of the big consistent issues with the first two ISOM releases, was they were just complete misses on editorial when it comes to just simple grammar. You know, like, all right, there should have been a comma here, or there was an extra comma here, or that was an extra word, or whatever. Like, it's not like there were a million of them, but there were enough of them to where it was like, all right, like, why wasn't that caught? Like, we should have caught that. That's on us. Like, we can do better. We're going to do better. So that was the hyper focus for AlphaCore. Whereas after that, for subsequent releases, there's far more of a collaborative thing between, depending on who the lead editors are, whether it's myself or the Saskas, far more of a collaborative effort in terms of working with the writer on like, hey, like, so you wrote this thing here, but this actually doesn't fit within the timeline maybe, or this person wouldn't necessarily know this particular factoid that you're having them drop here, any combination thereof. And so now there's a lot more of a collaborative effort between editorial and the writing, and it's only improving the entire product overall, in my opinion, which is hard to not do when you have writers of the caliber of Mike Barron and Chuck Dixon on your team.
Yeah, I feel like that's the weight that the mainstream used to carry, is that, you know, they wanted to still give oxygen to the creative process and allow for unique voices and unique characters to be able to express themselves within those universes. But then there was always the oversight of the editorial to make sure that there was continuity still being respected.
Mhm.
And
That continuity is so important to us because that was Eric's big thing when he was creating it, because he got so sick of just all the continuity ignoring and retcons and all of the stuff that DC and Marvel kept doing. He's like, I'm sick of this crap. Like, I'm gonna do it my damn self, and it's gonna be a learning process, but I'm gonna make sure that like continuity is something that's a focal point for my universe, you know, and that's a conversation that's had with every single writer that we bring on, because we need to make sure that not only, so there's actually two parts to that. And a funny, and I'll circle this back to a comment in a second that one of y'all made regarding AlphaCore feeling like it was its own separate thing, which I will push back on that. However, it does also exist in a space where you can read it without having read ISOM 1 or 2. So there's actually a lot going on there. There's a conversation that's had with the writing team, whoever it is that's brought on, that not only does whatever they're writing, whatever the script is that they're turning in, not only does it have to fall in line with the continuity, but it has to still feel like it exists within the continuity, right? Because those are two completely different things, and we want both to be happening at once. Where, look, not every single character has to interact with every single other character in our universe in order for it to feel like it's lived in. But it's important for little snippets to be dropped here and there, or little interactions hinted at, name drops, whatever that looks like. And it's going to change and fluctuate from script to script in terms of its level of appropriateness. That will at least make people feel like, oh yeah, this is part of this overall expanding universe. Like that, these characters might not be interacting with AlphaCore, but AlphaCore does exist within this universe, right?
okay, and
That's
you were going to
super
push.
important.
You were
As
going to
far
push
as
back
the
on-
AlphaCore piece, so this was, gosh, this goes back to me loving Chuck Dixon's work so much. Chuck Dixon put on a masterclass of world building within this book in terms of taking ideas and things that Eric presented in ISOM 1 and 2 and building upon them in a technical way. So for those who have read Chuck Dixon's like Bat Family stuff, y'all will know that he approached a lot of the world building with that from a very technical level. He was presenting a lot of technical information and stuff that was very in the weeds, very minutia, but doing it in a way which wasn't just like a big old info dump, to where he was presenting ideas and presenting reasons for the way things are. Like there are things that are dropped within AlphaCore. They're going to play a big part in coming books, or a big part in just like the world as a whole, because he was helping to grow our universe. And it's not just Eric who's building our universe. That'd be impossible with the scale that we're looking to do. It'd be impossible for anybody to do just by themselves. That we've got guys like Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron and the Saskas to help add additional things into the universe as it grows to make it feel that much more lived in and that much more real. There's a lot going on.
Hey, let me address something somebody said in the chat about the characters being generic. One of the great things I love John Byrne's writing. I loved his art as a kid. But one of the great things John Byrne would always do is take quote unquote generic characters. He would take the also ran characters from whatever universe he was working in, Marvel, DC, whatever, and he would make them unique and fun because it's not about the creation of the character. It's about how the writer and the artist develop that character in the story. It's called character. It's not called drawing, right?
Yeah.
It's not about the character's design or
to their point.
whatever,
To your point,
right?
there are 1.5 million.
Characterization.
Yeah, there are 1.5 million analogs to insert character archetype here, right? There are a lot of characters out there that are the quote unquote Superman analog.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Marvel and DC have been copying each other for 80 years.
Exactly. But what's far more important, and this goes beyond, so it's usually fan fiction, middle school writers that focus on this stuff, but I guess it's damn adults too, where it's just all about the powers. Oh, that person can fly and has super strength. You're just copying Superman. Bro, I'm sorry, like taking some of the most generic powers in the world, that's like the least important thing here. What should matter is the character themselves. Brian Solari, if you read AlphaCore, yes, he has some similarities to Superman. He can fly. He has super strength. He's resistant to bullets. But his character is nothing like Clark Kent. Absolutely not. What matters is how you build the characters, to your point, beyond just the surface level, just beyond the powers. Like, the powers should be the least important thing. People are so focused on that. Like, that's a cool thing. Sure. Absolutely. I wish I could fly, have super strength. I'd rather have super speed personally. But
yeah, I'm not a
it's
fan
so
of
much
the
more than
argument
that.
that you have to explain all the powers right away. That's
I don't like, look, I understand, and I try to approach this from a lot of different avenues and a lot of different points of view, because I am somebody who I started reading comic books when most of these characters, if not all of them that I gave a crap about, had already existed for 40 plus years, right? So there was already a lot of established characterization, a lot of established lore. We knew a whole hell of a lot about their powers, right? When I started reading Spider-Man, when I started reading Flash, when I started reading Superman and the X-Men, Teen Titans, all of those guys, and gals, I wouldn't want to be, sexist, exclusionary or something.
No, B.
but to be serious, like, there was so much that was already known about these characters by the time I jumped in, and there are people that are jumped in on comics after me. I grew up in the 90s. There are people that jumped in the early 2000s or the 2010s. So there are a lot of people that approach it from the only perspective that they have, which is the perspective that all of this information already exists for them. They can Google all of this information. They can pull up Fandom Wiki or whatever on any which character in Marvel and DC's pantheons, and have at their fingertips, it's very surface level information, but as far as, I guess, all of the details that they're interested in, sure, there it is for you. It's all handed to you on a silver platter. We'll reach that point, God willing, but it's gonna be a minute. People that were reading Spider-Man when Stan Lee and Ditko first created him, they didn't have all the information that we have now.
But I
Same
did
with
have all the
Flash.
information I needed in that first story. I read it.
Yeah,
gives
It was about
everything
the
we need.
character.
About the character. It told us the story of the character. And,
Sure, but that's not the criticism that's being levied at us.
Right.
Lit. The criticism that's being levied at us, we don't know enough about his powers. We don't know enough about this. We don't know enough,
Well,
know enough
we need
about
to
No,
know
no,
the
no.
things.
We don't know about like almost anyone's powers. I think there's a certain point where it's like, and it's not as much. It is a compliment and a criticism, because the compliment part is that we wouldn't have the criticism if we didn't want to know. You know, if we didn't care, be like, I don't care what, I just whatever. But like, there are people who want to know what Yaira can do and what the extent,
Sure.
just
You
in
will learn
general.
what she can do in her book.
Good. I'm
Yeah,
just saying that,
that's
like,
a storytelling choice, man. Let him freaking develop it. Let him figure it out and show it.
I completely, and look, I will. Everybody has a different perspective. Everybody has a different taste. Whether they're somebody who's a critiquer, whether there's somebody who's also fancies himself as a writer, whatever that is, whether they're just a fan, whether they're a reader, whether they just like comics, right? They're all going to have a different opinion on how they prefer storytelling to be done. ISOM 1 and 2 jived with a lot of people. It didn't jive with a lot of others. AlphaCore was clearly similar. Yaira will be the same. That's how every single one of our releases is going to be. Every single one of them is going to,
You can never please everyone.
hook a different audience.
We had this old. I did have this old discussion for years in the beginning of my YouTube career, where we have a thing is, yeah, people will have different opinions. I read a book where this guy teaches a class, and he does have his students bring a novel that they love and a graphic novel that they hate. And sometimes students will bring a novel from the same writer. The writer will have made a novel they loved and one that they hated. And sometimes a student will bring a novel they loved, and someone else will bring the same novel as a novel they hated. So yeah, opinions will. It depends on the taste of the writer. The reader. But thing is, there is a solid background of story structure. You have to follow these certain things, especially depending on genre. But there are things you have to follow for payoff arcs. Even if it's an overarching story, there are pieces you want to have in there. So
but some people measure those
substance.
payoffs completely differently.
No, they-
I almost called you script because both of you have been on my council.
well, if I can,
But
if
they
I can,
don't though.
if I can ping off of what LitDev's saying is it's not that you can't follow those rules. It's just that there are consequences for following them.
Sure,
and not
you
following
wind
them.
up inevitably creating a niche within a niche. I understand that.
We don't follow the structure. It's kind of what Ryan Johnson did. That's kind of he wanted to subvert everything.
He didn't follow a universe structure. There's a difference.
Universe structure.
He didn't follow the
You
structure.
guys
that
just
was set
don't
within-
understand what Ryan.
Well,
Johnson was trying to do.
actually,
Shoot myself in the face
Actually,
right
he
here
was
live
so
on air.
genius.
No,
No
what
one
you
could
did, you
figure
had
it
somebody.
out.
Ryan Johnson understands story structure. What he doesn't understand is how to operate within somebody else's universe. Because he's got too much of an ego.
So-
He's
Yeah,
too much
I love
of an
all his other
artiste.
movies.
We can
the
bring
Star
it-
Wars ones,
To bring it back to the discussion about powers, I think that there's obviously, the idea that there's going to be different opinions on things is kind of moot. What I would say is the fact that there is definitely a line of giving readers enough information and not giving readers enough information. And different readers may draw that line in a slightly different place, but the line still exists. And so one of the pieces of criticism that I think is coming out often is that people want more information. And I think that it's fair
and
to
it's
bring that
coming.
up.
Well, the needed information, the required information. You can have a lot of mystery. It kind of plays into the mystery box idea, but like a good version of it. You can have mystery, but Brandon Sanderson laid it down pretty well. Is that you make a promise and you need to pay off that promise. It's kind of like that. And in order to structure it towards that promised payoff, we didn't have the information that gets us there. And
I
we do need to
promise
have
there
it
will be
closer.
more information in the next book.
You don't
Well,
need
that's
everything.
usually how that works to some degree or another. But to actually be serious on that, yeah, that's how that works. There's going to be more information in succeeding issues. As the universe continues to grow, as characters continue to have more entries, there's going to be more information presented, whether it's overt or explicitly stated or just shown or implied or something that maybe only people that are really picking apart each panel are actually going to pick up on, but it's there.
so are you saying?
Because there are people who think that there's been zero thought given to ISOM's powers, and I'm telling you right now, as somebody who has eyes on our universe Bible, that could not be further from the truth. Trust me, ISOM is so much more than just a guy that can survive being dropped.
But is that
onto a
growth
fucking
for the
car.
universe? Is that going to take into consideration some of the
Oh,
criticisms that are meant to help grow the product?
That's a yes and no answer, actually.
Hmm.
What it is that the plan was already in place to be a slow burn and introduce new information over a period of time. Look, that's Eric's style. Some people want more fast-paced, high octane, or just like somewhere that's in between. Like, give me more information a little more quickly, please. That's fair. That's how some people want their storytelling. I'm not going to knock them for that. Like, that's fine. But to act like there's no plan in place, or that the information that's going to be presented, and this is one of the things that's going to just ultimately come up, and you're like, oh well, he only did that because people were complaining that, you know, there was zero information on his powers and blah blah blah. No, just like pay the frick attention. Like he's taking his time with the storytelling, and that's perfectly fine. We have other writers that are telling more fast-paced stories. If that's genuinely what you prefer, stick with those. And then maybe when you hear about an omnibus collection or whatever of a completed arc, and you're like, oh, okay, so it sounds like they wrapped up this and they told a complete story, blah, blah, blah. All right, now maybe I'll check that out and maybe I'll enjoy it more. Fine.
I just think that if you have like every issue, we have a goal that's being met, and then we get the storytelling and the world building we need to understand their goal and their structure and their conflict.
Sometimes you miss the forest for the trees. Sometimes you have to actually take a step back and actually see something in its totality in order to understand the whole picture. And I do understand where you're coming from. I do. But that's just... Obviously, you all know this because you read ISOM 1 and 2. That's not the type of storytelling that's being done with ISOM right now. It's going to be something where once y'all read ISOM 3 and you take a step back and you look at the whole picture there, you're like,
Well, let's keep it germane to AlphaCore, because AlphaCore like was the one that I was also having some of these questions. So it's
Okay.
not just about, because I understand that you've got a different view of it because you can see the picture we can't.
sure. And I understand that I have eyes in places where y'all don't have access. I understand. I'm taking that into account.
Right.
What's the
taking
idea
into
that
account,
if I were like a cold reader and I was going into AlphaCore and I read all of AlphaCore, I would be like, if I'm left with all these questions, I'm not interested. And I'm like, what is all this? This is too much.
Well, clearly that's not the case because I heard y'all's discussion about AlphaCore. You
Well,
were interested.
If I weren't though, if I didn't overcome all these obstacles, then
Obstacles that didn't prevent you from enjoying the book as
well, me personally, because I know this. I read AlphaCore. I mean, I saw 1 and 2, so I know these characters already. I know how Chuck Dixon writes. But if I was a cold reader, I didn't come in knowing this stuff or willing to overcome these things, then there would be some trouble there. There would be some issues of information. Like if I don't want to do the homework, if I don't want to.
Yeah,
wait
that's where I am
for,
with them.
for
'Cause I didn't
3.
read ISOM 2. So I was coming in and I felt like I was coming into a series that was already in progress.
Yeah, because they were introduced in ISOM 1 and 2. Kind of that they have sections
right,
in there.
right.
That seems to be, as far as I know, that's everyone's like favorite parts in ISOM 1 is when AlphaCore shows up. Because I've listened to a lot of people. Like,
It's
Well, I
not
mean, it's
my
the same
favorite
thing.
part,
If
but I
you
do
just
like
go
that part.
pick
But
up
I
any-
also just like the books and blondes, so I mean, there's that. I'm a
my
little
favorite part of
biased.
ISOM 1 is when he had the discussion with Avery has a discussion with Fontano. That was my favorite part. I said that
Okay.
in a video.
I
But
shared that
what,
quite a lot
I like
for
the
people in
final
our
fight
guild.
scene. I mean, yeah.
My favorite part is actually Avery's discussion. It's very brief. It's only like a page with his niece, Vassie. That's my favorite part. It's a super benign part for surface level, but there's actually a lot of world building going on in that scene.
We're sorry. We're not trying to frame this in terms of like putting you in the hot seat defensive mode. This is mostly just us. Like I said, we're clearly interested in the story.
Not even taking it that way in the
Okay,
slightest.
that's
Don't
good.
even try.
Because I know that there's been a conversation.
Twitless, this is blood sports.
Twitless is getting very
narrative
hot
blood
right now.
sports go.
Kick,
I mean, like
kick
I'm-
Twitless.
if you're reading chat, then yeah. But no.
I see the chat. I'm not.
But
They're
no,
having fun.
Chat.
No, yeah.
They're-
Chat, I
fine.
appreciate your engagement and you giving these fine fellows your view.
Chat is king, and they
Well,
have free
yeah.
reign to speak
Speaking
their
of the
mind.
chat, Steve says all the best superhero comic books gave the reader enough information to understand the world of the character and how the character fit into that world. Comic book readers are not the most patient. There was no problem with that in AlphaCore. You totally understood the world they lived in.
Yeah.
You totally understood their place in it. So that's not an argument about this book.
Sure, but I would also push back a little bit and say that after reading, I think well over 100 pages worth of AlphaCore content between AlphaCore and some of their other appearances, I still need to know a little bit more. Not all of it. I don't need an entire 4 pages telling me every single nuance, but I need to know a little bit more about Valdez's whips. Like I need to know just a little more than I do know now in order for me to invest in that superhero fantasy. And that's kind of like the overall impression that the criticism that I think me and Lit Dev are kind of getting at, if I'm not.
I kind of boil down to the narrative structure of we need to know what's normal, what the parameters are, so that we know when to feel tension. Like if this is a normal dude and he's under fire from summer fire, we know that he could die at any time. But if it's Superman, there's no tension because he can take bullets. So we kind of need to know at least those parameters so we can have tension later on in these things, and less about the overall picture, more down to the focused story at hand. So we know what the capabilities more or less of every character. So when the plot starts to develop, we get to Act 1 and Act 2. We know what everyone is capable of, and oh no, there's a tension tight scene here because I don't know that he can't get in there, she can't get in there. Braxton is doing something else. So it's kind of like that to help build the tension and give us the emotional hit points we need for later on in the story.
We know that Spider-Man has the proportional strength of a spider, but we also know that he can't take a tank shell to the chest. So when he's facing certain attacks, to Lit Dev's point, we know that certain attacks are definitely a threat. He should dodge that one, and if he doesn't, he's in trouble. And then that's also why when we get inside Peter Parker's head with all those thought balloons, he would even narrate that to us. I'm not saying you have to do that, but we were given that type of information so that we go, Spider-Man is worried about that attack that Electro is making. He can't just tank that one. I've been given that information either through visual or through the verbal. And I think that it would help us more as readers to invest more of ourselves into that world, to be given more.
In fact, it's kind of like the Green Lantern
shot the dude at the beginning.
It's kind of like the Green Lantern weakness of a lot in the beginning. Green Lantern had that weakness to yellow, and it's like, okay, that's his weakness. We don't know why that was a weakness. It wasn't explained. It just was.
Age, Green Lantern.
Yeah, it just was. And then later on, we get like, it's parallax. This ancient thing that's kind of hidden in the powers. We didn't need to know about parallax because that wasn't pertinent. What was pertinent to the
parallax
main
was a retcon twice.
Yeah, they added that in there later. They don't. I don't know. I'm not sure if that was like a thing that they added in, like they knew of beforehand. But the idea is there was like a weakness to yellow, and then of course later on they asked, why is the weakness yellow? And they came up with an answer for that. But we didn't need even if they did know about parallax way in the beginning, we didn't need to know about his existence. All we need to know was that his weakness is yellow. It's kind of that sort of information as we're talking about here. Like what is his weakness? The color yellow. Okay, so now when someone oddly enough sends a yellow colored missile by coincidence at the city, like now he's in trouble because it's yellow. So it's like something like that. We need to know these parameters so we know when he's in trouble, when they're not in trouble, what they can do and what they can't do. And even though it's a stupid story of someone sends a yellow missile towards a city in Green Lantern, we know that there is tension and there is a crisis going on because he can't affect the color yellow. You don't need to know about parallax yet. So there's information we don't have to know.
Parallax was introduced decades later.
Yeah, we don't. But like that was the explanation as to why they have the color yellow as a weakness, because he's in there or something. So even if they're under hypothetical, if they did know about it and they did build Green Lantern from the ground up, knowing about parallax being stuck in the Green Lantern Corps or whatever as a weakness, that's why they have the weakness to yellow. Even if they did, we don't need to know about that. Not until it becomes relevant later on in a big storyline or something. We just need to know that the weakness is yellow. And that's enough to give us the parameters of how the Green Lantern works. And also they need to charge his ring every 24 hours or whatever. But that's kind of I think that's kind of where we're getting at here. We need some of that. And of course, the idea here is to help improve indie comics, help improve the story structure and how people kind of make their comics so they seem a little more sound. And I know this. I said in my ISOM review because I made these mistakes. I made the mistakes. I sent them into professors, and this is what they came back with. Things like this. They also came back with the ideas of if you're in like a writer's room, if you're in a newsroom, have some words that connect to newsrooms. Things like that. But the information we don't need to know is information that's outside the story, like a parallax idea. But information we do need to know are things that relate to the narrative and would inform us about the crisis and what they can and can't do, so that we know when there's tension. And tension is what really sticks it to the reader. That's what really gets the reader reading and stuck to the page.
No,
Yeah,
fair
it makes Solari's weakness cat hair.
Oh,
Biggest
gosh.
weakness bulges.
No,
Have
make
you ever
it-
tried getting a ton of cat hair off of your clothes, man? That's a pain in the ass.
If
That's
we're
what
gonna
I'm
do that,
saying.
Make it his eyebrows. We've already established that in the lore.
Even if if it was just allergies,
Maybe
like
his
okay,
eyebrows have superpowers.
and like he encounters like some Bond villain with a cat, like okay, oh, then we know that
And he runs
Solari might be
away.
in trouble.
No.
Look, a lot of this is going to be something that kind of snowballs as we go on. There's going to reach a point, probably far sooner rather than later, where a lot of things are going to start to come to a head. A lot of what you just said, I do understand, and I can empathize with that to a degree. However, I will posit that hasn't been explicitly necessary in a book like ISOM yet, because there hasn't been that much action in ISOM yet to where that information would really matter yet. It's going to, and trust me, it's going to in ISOM 3. For people who were like, yeah, I mean, there really wasn't much action in ISOM 1. I could use a little bit more. And then we kind of gave them a little bit more in ISOM 2. They're like, okay, but like more, please.
I mean, there's
a
like
little
two
bit
fights
more?
in there. There's
Like,
quite a bit of action.
There's,
I thought.
like, there's, as far as like the balance that I think most people are looking for and that will actually properly service the story that Eric's telling, that's ISOM 3. That's Eric's best book so far. That's Cliff's best book so far, by far. And I'm really excited for people to see the wrap up to the ill-advised arc personally, because I was excited to read it. I was like, wow, okay, yeah, we're cooking. We're like there's clearly vision there, but also vision that was refined from being surrounded by guys like Mike Barron and Chuck Dixon. Like if people think that Eric isn't picking up, Eric's the kind of guy where like whether he publicly voices it or not, he knows where he has spaces on his tool belt that can still get filled, or maybe like a tool that could get replaced with a better one. And that's why he's surrounding himself with people that have been doing this for a long time, so that he can like look at what they're doing, like he can chat with them one-on-one, not even on streams. Like obviously he just did a stream, was it yesterday, with Mike Barron, which was a great stream, by the way. If you guys haven't checked that out, please do so. Mike drops some great factoids for people who are like burgeoning writers. I highly encourage people to listen to Mike Barron's advice on writing.
I usually listen to all of those, like Soska Sisters, Mike Barron. I listen to a lot of writers
Well,
whenever
they
talk.
have completely different approaches to writing, and it's
Yeah, I
evident
love
in their writing styles, which is fantastic. That just goes to show that different writing styles can work. But to what I was getting to was that Eric is picking up on all of that. He's like slowly adding things that is like, oh, I really like what they're doing there.
That's usually
And I'm
what
gonna-
happens in the
take
development
advantage
of
of
a new writer. Yeah, well, in development of new
So what
writing,
happens when you're new in anything, right?
And Neil Gaiman lays it out
just
pretty
going
well.
to absorb, like you're going to be a sponge. If you have any, any two wits about you, you're going to be kind of a sponge to people who are, more experienced than you.
But usually when a writer begins, they will begin to emulate who they admire most. And like Neil Gaiman kind of laid this out pretty well in his masterclass and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they will begin to emulate who they love most. And this happened to me with me as well. And then they will, as you continue to write stories, you will eventually you're able to develop your own voice. And once you develop your own voice, boom, you're cooking now. That's what usually happens. So yeah, but you just takes practice like anything else. It takes practice. You need to develop that skills. They don't just come usually naturally. You do have to develop these skills though. It takes practice.
It's
Unfortunately,
a learning practice.
it just takes
I'm a
practice.
growing writer myself, and like I'm trying to absorb things in conversations that I have with other writers, whether I'm chatting with the Saskas or when I got to chat with Chuck when he came to the warehouse to sign AlphaCore, when I got to chat with Mike Barron when I had him on my High Council show over on World Class Bullshitters. Like anybody that has any true passion and desire to improve their craft is going to try and absorb as much as they possibly can from their veterans. And that's what Eric's doing, guys. Like
That's legacy. Right? It's
like
your
maybe-
mentor will teach you.
Maybe his just writing style, even when it's at its most refined, like he perfects his preferred writing style, but it's still not your jam. Okay, like all right, that's fine. There's no harm, no foul. But he is genuinely like seeking to constantly improve because he's a guy that can't sit still. He does not tolerate just like sitting in whatever current position he's in.
I hope that in AlphaCore, I mean not AlphaCore 3, but ISOM 3, when we do reveal the powers, they do make sense because when people read AlphaCore 3, they're definitely going to go back to AlphaCore 1 and compare it to his confrontation with what's his name, because that's just always been how it's been. We've done with movies for a long time. You know, this is kind of what we've been doing on here for a long time. Is okay? Well, if his powers are these, then why, if they don't make sense, like what we're going to ask ourselves, why didn't he use it here? Why didn't he use it here in the past? So hopefully in our AlphaCore ISOM 3, they make sense, whatever they might be. Just because it will be inevitable that they will compare it to, why didn't this happen here? Why didn't this happen there? It's just something that you have to keep in mind as a writer.
I promise I'm not smiling because I'm being smug. I'm smiling because I know that ISOM 3 does such a great job of improving upon the first two while maintaining the vision that Eric has had for his book so far. It shows, I promise you guys, it shows like a lot of growth as a writer where like Eric is genuinely trying to constantly better himself, and ISOM 3 is that. Like there's a lot of cool stuff.
We all
there.
should. Everybody should.
No, absolutely.
Like the potential.
If you're a creative,
you guys have so much freaking potential, right? I mean, just with the marketing already, and how much you can make per book, and how much you can develop, and you have freaking more potential than anybody else in the space right now.
There's nothing more tragic than somebody or an organization that has a ton of potential or a ton of talent and just thinks that like they're cool just chilling right there, right? It's like, no. Well,
it's not even the talents, like
more.
What you were saying before about Eric. This is how you build a company. It's you build a team of people with like-minded views or a like-minded goal and you want everybody you hire to be better at whatever it is than you are, because you never want to be the smartest or the best person in the room.
No, and that's actually something that I consider myself. I tell my team almost every single week when we have our creative meeting. As the creative manager, I tell them that I'm blessed to be surrounded by people who are demonstrably more talented than me in almost every way. I just get to boss them around. And that's partially a joke, but like I'm genuinely blessed to have people who have such immense talent around me all the time, because I never want to be, and I don't think I ever will be, the most talented person in the room or the smartest person in the room, because I want to be able to continually learn from at least someone. I want to learn from somebody there, whether it's one people, two people, or literally everybody else. Like I want to be able to absorb. And I want to be able to improve.
It's a difficult burden to carry, Andrew.
Oh, I'm sure.
Mike is the greatest at everything.
Thank you so much for your humility there. I know that was a great sacrifice.
Thank you for being enough.
Not everyone can put that on the table and be like, you know what? I hate to tell you guys this, and I didn't want to admit this, but I am the smartest one in the room.
I literally have never been wrong.
Oh, well, I've been on high council with you before. So.
I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
I wasn't wrong. I was mistaken. All right.
Oh, that's
very different. Very different.
Yeah, I can see the difficulties in what Eric is trying to accomplish. He's a creator trying to follow through it with his vision.
Well read. Rhaegar makes a very good point in the chat.
Which one here?
Where he says,
who else can draw Boba Fett with his foot? Yeah.
Oh,
Mike, it's always about you, isn't it, Mike?
That's
of course.
What it is.
Let me finish my point.
Am I here?
Yes. So Eric is trying to follow through on his vision as a creator, and he's doing it under a microscope because he's doing it on such a grand scale. But he does have to find that find his legs and find the room to be able to follow through on exactly what he wants to accomplish. And
Absolutely.
I think
That's
it is
not
a
an easy thing
challenge.
to do. I'm not jealous.
Yeah. And not everything needs to be like community created, like, you know, Snakes on a Plane, where you ask a bunch of bloggers, you know, how to write a movie script and think it's going to come out great. Like sometimes it just needs to be the creator who drives the creation. But I think one of the mistakes, circling back to what we were talking about with the mainstream, is they started hiring people. I don't know if this has always been true, but it's definitely true now, is that they hired people who loved themselves more than they loved the characters. And before, people that worked in comics, they didn't have to know every detail of every, moment of all the lore and the characters. They found something indelible in those characters that they related to. They loved them. And so they respected them when they worked on those properties. And the people nowadays don't. So
yeah, when it comes to the mainstream, I think it's undervalued how much work is really involved to, and obviously you can never please everybody, but there's so much work involved in coming in as a new writer on a character that has, half a century or more worth of established history, and trying to write something that pleases pleases longtime fans, while also trying to garner new ones. That's an incredibly difficult balance to strike. And like I mentioned earlier, when I first came in, people who are being genuine will do the due diligence. They'll do the homework. Like they'll learn as much as they can. You're not gonna, like, look, if you are writing your first issue of Batman ever, like, good luck reading literally every book that's ever had Batman in it. Like, this is not gonna happen in your lifetime. That being said, you can do enough homework to be able to understand the character. And then what you can do, as a good writer ought to, is latch onto what connects with you most about that character. Because if you think about all the different, like, great runs of established heroes, whether it's DC or Marvel or whatever, a lot of them will have, like, honed in on something completely different from each other. Like they'll focus, like hyper focus on one aspect of a character that was completely different from the aspect of the character that this other writer focused on. And that's because as writers, we're going to naturally focus and gravitate towards what we relate to the most. But there's a big difference between doing that and then just kind of like copy and pasting yourself onto a character, aka Tom King. Go fuck yourself. There's a big difference with that. Yeah, Tom King character assassinated my favorite all-time comic book character, so he can kick rocks.
yeah, he cucked Batman.
It's like,
Not
what's
even-
Not
Yeah,
even
but-
not even
the
that.
list
He
of them-
character assassinated Wally West. He can sit and spin on rusty rebar.
he
for
killed
the
a
rest
lot of
his life.
characters.
So
Yeah.
that's all I'm gonna say
Spiritually.
on that, because we'd be here for 5 hours if I kept going on that rant. But what I'm getting at is that it's perfectly fine to hone in on different aspects of a character. And that's something that a good writer is going to naturally do. And that's why you get people that it's like, oh, well, this is my favorite run on Batman. Or like somebody else will say, yeah, that one's cool, but like this is my favorite run on Batman, because they connect with the character differently on that. That's perfectly okay. As long as like the key tenets are still there of the character, that's what matters. Like you can tell a completely new story with a character. You can focus on a different aspect, different facet of a character than the other writers did prior to you, as long as you still make sure that character is who they are at their core. Longtime fans will at least be fine with it.
I think a lot of
That's the difficulty.
I think a lot of people are now taking inspiration from manga, because they're just selling like hotcakes even in the West. They're just dominating the West. Because right now, I think the way that American superhero comics are structured is just awful.
Manga's not doing anything that they haven't been doing for the last several decades.
No, this is the stuff that manga's doing right now. Like we used to do in America with the pulp era. We used to crank out stories, cool stories, all kinds of that Conan, Cthulhu Mythos, Spicy Detective.
I think you're looking at it backwards. Like, you're not wrong, but you're looking at it in the wrong direction. Manga's doing the same thing it's been doing for decades. The West used to also do it. We just stopped doing it. and the manga,
manga
they
has
just
a
kind of
functionally different paradigm. Manga, essentially,
They just
manga
kept doing
are
it.
all independent books that are just paid for by publishers. So you have the same creative team with the same creative vision for the entire run of a book. We don't have that. We haven't had that.
It's more like a who's
Except for
who over
independent
here. It's way more. All right, we need this writer on this thing, this thing, this thing. And it's
Yeah.
like they just
Oh,
take
bro,
the reins
I've
of
been
someone
part
else.
of the machine. You don't even want to know how the freaking hot dogs are made. They just
but also,
grind this stuff out.
I've heard that
so does
the
manga.
West,
Like manga, really, that's also endemic over there. Like it's notorious how
It's
they,
huge.
Yeah, and like the
huge over here,
shortcuts
too.
as well.
Yeah, well, they have like this brutal editors. They're brutal. Anyone can try, but the brutal editors. Well, it's not too uncommon to see people just run out of the editor's room
the
crying.
manga industry, the Japanese manga industry is freaking blood sports.
Absolutely, they said that too. I've read the Hiro Hikaraki's
is.
book, and he's
They
like,
don't-
"Oh yeah,
they do
don't
not-
care.
The stuff that we
You are a
and that-
number."
That's to like even their niche books. Like they understand that a specific property is a niche. Like the crap that we have going on over here in the West, where like something that should be a AAA drops to just ridiculously low numbers, low sales, month to month. Like they'd be out of there. Like you're done. You don't have a job. Like you're gone.
Yeah, you get published. You get published. You're not out of the woods yet.
That's why they work themselves
You're
to
in abeyance.
death over there, because literally if they stop doing that, they're done.
But
And
Hiro-
there's a lack of that competitive nature and that drive. Now, obviously, nobody should be literally working themselves to death to be
not the
clear.
ideal situation.
But
no.
no, it really isn't. But there's a competitive spirit in that where people understand it's like, hey, if I don't put forth my best work, somebody else will, and their crap's going to get published. Mine's not. They're going to have a paycheck. I won't. Guess who doesn't have food on the table, right? And that's something that's been lost in the West. And
That's
that's
how pulp writers
something
used to work.
Yeah,
they
no,
just like I need to crank out novels. I can't. I don't write. I don't eat. So they came out with formulas, and they identified what worked, what didn't. That's why Conan went from like, oh, the story about a 40-year-old king to a guy who explores dungeons and saves a woman and then fights monsters every issue or every story. It's how it works. Like identify what worked and what people would sell and what people would read. But just like back then,
there's a reason you can go through 80, 90 years of American comics and only out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of comics that have been published, you can pick out like handfuls of great stories.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's like because 99% of it is just churned
Well,
out
'cause-
trash.
Well, yeah, even think of someone like your all-time favorite characters. You'll have like one fantastic writer, and then you'll have somebody name another fantastic writer, and you're like, yeah, but who was in between that? Yeah, like a bunch of tripe. Okay. Right? Whereas the manga market's so different because it's usually just the same creative team the entire time.
Yep.
Yeah, they take the creative team.
We rotate creative teams so frequently
Yep.
here. Like gone are the days where you have a creative team. And I think this is we are long past the generation of creators who have that much gas in them, because you look at somebody like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, Tom King, who I revile. His first handful of issues on Batman were okay. Some actually legitimately genuinely like them, like when he got up through like War of Jokes and Riddles. But like once you get past that and you get into like the issue like high 40s to the 50 mark where they had the stupid wedding, all of a sudden it just
so many weddings.
falls off a cliff. I subscribe to the notion that Batman doesn't need to be married. His lady is Gotham, but that's just me. I think Selena
women
Kyle's
should be just
horrible,
always
horrible
lusting
choice.
after him. He's not like he can't be. Should be tied
But
down.
Selena's a freaking no good criminal. Like what the hell?
Whoa!
No, suck it.
Actually,
Hold on.
No.
Also,
I'm not trying to. No. Hold on that. But to my
I read
point,
Injustice. She's a raving leftist.
Oh gosh.
She's like,
To my point,
the world's being taken
Mike-
over. She complains
Mike-
about like
Mike-
gun
Mike-
control.
Mike's here on the
Hashtag not
panel.
my
Don't
Catwoman.
complain about
Hashtag
injustice.
not
Mike's on
my
the
Selena
panel.
Kyle. Not my Selena Kyle.
That was the finest comic book of the last decade.
But
Everybody
the thing
knows.
is that
You need your
thing
Trump
is,
avatar, Mike.
You had, oh my
This
gosh.
is the Trump avatar.
You have writers that might have like
Trump
25 or 50 like really solid issues in them, but after that they have no idea like how to continue on with the character and continue on with the story. We're,
It's like
we're
Dave Mo.
so
It's like a Stephen Moffat with Doctor Who. He had some good
Yeah,
stories.
we just don't have that anymore. It seems like in modern writers, like even otherwise fantastic writers just don't have more than, you know, X number of issues. Joshua Williamson, he was writing really solid Flash comics up until like Flash War over at DC, and then after that it just kind of like fell off a cliff. And then he did Flash Year One, and that was solid.
His Dawn of
and he
DC
wrapped it up.
Superman's really good.
I've heard that, actually. I have heard that, but like but that's to my point. Like he had X number of issues in him in terms of Flash stories, like good Flash stories, and then he just had nothing. Right? It just fell off a cliff. Maybe he still then had like, oh well, I might not have any more good Flash stories in me, but I've got some great Superman stories in me. But my point there is that we've seemed to have lost the generation of writers who have like 100+ issues in them of just one character.
That was the old school like Stan Lee era. Bring it. It doesn't matter. Bring him out. Bring out another story. We just need another one. Doesn't care. Like, but they eventually get better at what they do.
Yeah, the 80s had a lot of those guys.
Yeah, a lot of those guys just crank out the stories. You know what? I don't care if you're not inspired. All right, look, you got to crank it out or you don't eat.
Yeah, I'm gonna defend trash. Trash is fine. And comics built
sometimes you have to get them
fire on it.
You know, sometimes you got to pump out a lot of trash before you get some gold. You know what I mean? Sometimes it just works that way.
There's not much gold in the mainstream right now, though.
There's almost none. It is.
I will
awful.
say the current Ultimate Spider-Man is pretty good.
That's why I went to Indies.
I hate saying that because I don't like Jonathan Hickman.
Man, I really don't get it. It's not like
He strikes me as the same kind of guy that huffs his own gas. Like he relies usually on
the good writer,
being
exactly.
stupid to sound smart is usually how he comes across. But his Ultimate Spider-Man is actually
if you're writing comic books, you got 12 comic books to write a year. If you can come up with one really good story a year, I mean, you can craft that into a 12-issue story. Right? It's not like you don't have to come up with a new story every month.
It's not even, and I'm okay.
I mean, some of the best story, you know, they're 6, 8, 12 chapters long. Freaking,
well, I want to be very clear about this because
did that all the time.
I'm not going to pretend like I understand what it's like to be an immensely talented creative and work in the mainstream industry and pump out stories for all these, you know, long lauded and beloved characters, but a month-to-month comic book, it's only like 24 pages of story, guys. Like that's not a long script. Like you don't to your point, yeah, absolutely. Unless you're gonna pay like $7. So like, oh, this is a key issue, so we're gonna charge $7.99 for this. This is like only 2 extra pages. What are you talking about? That's the thing. It's ridiculous. But to your point, it's not that crazy of a stretch to think like, yeah, okay, like have one solid story in you that stretches over the course of a year, because it's only like 20, 22, 24 pages per issue. Stretch that out in terms of like a big arc or 2 arcs, because the freaking standard is what, 6 issues per trade, whatever. You got to wrap up your arc in that. That's an arbitrary thing that they decided, and they only decided
but even
that.
Then, that's only two stories a year. Come on,
right? But they only decided that so that they could like continually tie it into whatever their big crossover event BS is, because that's all that the big publishers actually care about. Like every single current arc always seems like it's supposed to tie into the whatever the big crossover is.
Secret
and
Wars
it's annoying. It's so annoying. It's like I remember when crossovers were kind of a bigger deal. Like maybe they weren't amazing. Like I said, one of my first crossovers that I read was 0 Hours. So like I don't have that much room to talk about.
That wasn't that bad.
My first crossover was the first crossover.
Okay, so it's not Heroes in Crisis or Identity Crisis, but it's still not great.
Yeah,
that puts I think Rippaverse in a very interesting situation though, because in a way, the way it's from what you're describing, and Valiant did something very similar. The entire comic book universe approach is essentially a kind of crossover because everything is kind of linking together. So even if it's not a big event, the comic itself is meant to be a kind of big tapestry overall. So I think that's kind of an interesting scenario that
Yeah, but that was
not-
back in the days when editors were there to make sure you weren't stepping on each other's toes with like, well, Spider-Man's not supposed to be in New York this month. He's off planet.
Right. And there are
Instead of,
positives and
trying to
negatives to that.
interweave everything. Most of the stories took place in their own, sandbox.
Well, one
Yeah,
thing,
they're-
the reason why I brought up manga is because they are also doing superheroes, and they're also crushing America in not only its own soil but its own genre, which is superheroes. One Punch Man, My Hero Academia, both of them rocking those sales, rocking those charts. So,
Dude,
according
all
to
of those stories are superhero stories in disguise. Naruto is just ninja superheroes. All of them.
I mean, yeah, that's why I
Originally,
didn't like it. Actually, I didn't like Naruto. After I started watching Naruto, I was like, "Oh, cool, ninja fun," and then it became Dragon Ball Z. I was like, "Oh,
It's superpowers.
if I wanted to watch Dragon
superheroes.
Ball Z, I would watch Dragon Ball Z."
That's a genre thing. You just got to understand, like shonens
It's shonen,
inevitably just become like power scaling, like superhero esque things. That's just what they are. They're just meant to be like fun BS. That's all shonens are. Like you might get lucky and have like an arc or two here or there that have like some legitimately like, oh shoot, I wasn't expecting that deep of storytelling here.
Yeah, but they're just
Okay.
superheroes without spandex.
For the most part, yeah.
there's
Well,
ninjas.
sometimes-
Well, the whole
sometimes
thing with
they have
My
this
Hero
kind of-
Academia is like it was meant to be kind of
Yeah.
like a riff off of
Yeah.
Western superheroes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's My Hero Academia. Everyone has their own powers, and I think they have an explanation. They
It's
tell you,
the
by the
Xavier
way,
School.
And
they
it's
tell
fun,
you-
and the main character is once again, as with any
Crybaby.
shonen, like the least interesting character.
he's a crybaby, which annoyed me to no end. But he's like, he just cries, like, oh, I'm just crying. But the thing is, the feature of him is that he has no powers, and so but they tell you that he has no powers, and so.
Yeah.
And it begins with level, first issue. It's really about getting to know Midoriya, I think his name is, but beforehand, at least in the anime, they kind of set the course of, oh, there's so many people have a special power. Some of them might not be great, but they lay on the what we know as facts, and we're in. We know what's going on. We don't understand. Oh, there's powers and stuff, and then the main character is unique because he has no powers, and so it's all about. It's not about his powers because he has none. It's about how good of a person he is. And then he runs into All Might crushes his dreams, which is hilarious. You got to see him cry again. And it's like, you can't actually be a superhero without powers. Sorry, bro. But then we figure out that the All for One. See, this is a really good, interesting point because of the All for One is a mystery. We don't know what it actually does for a while. He just gets it, and we know that it gets All Might's powers. We don't know what it actually does. So it would be, I think it might be interesting to look into these things and see how they work and why they work. So it's because I know that the whole thing, what's his powers, was a big thing that popped up. And so My Hero Academia didn't get that really. It did have this whole, what is the All for One kind of thing. And it did it where it didn't have that backlash. It did it correctly. And so, or did it where a way where people accepted it. So that's what I do. I kind of just look at these things where I want to do something similar, and I look at something else that did something similar, and how it worked. What did they do? How did they craft that? So that's part of the growing process. But right now, manga and anime are selling like hotcakes in both the West and the East. So I do look at how are they doing the story structure? How are they doing these
Well,
elements?
how do I put this? That's a skewed comparison in some regards because you have a handful of manga that do, just as you said, sell like hotcakes. Like they can't sell them fast enough, right? They're flying off the shelves. They have everything else that's like super niche and then like super niche that do well for their audience and for what those publishers have invested into them. But like not everything is selling numbers like Jujutsu Kaisen or One Piece.
That's
like
why I look at this, the ones that sell high.
That's one of the it's easy to draw those comparisons because those ones are absolutely destroying the Western comic book market. like, and it's not even close. Like, they're embarrassing us in our own backyard. That being said, it's only a few of them, and that means that we really just have to be paying attention to like what audiences want. That's something that the mainstream isn't doing. They don't care.
Yeah,
They care
but
about what their
realistically,
peers
even
want. They
even
care
manga that
about
doesn't
what
do that well still outsells our top 10 comics.
Well, that was my point. Like, just look at the stuff that does really, really well and do what they're and see what they're doing and what they're doing right. That was what I mean.
Yeah.
My Hero Academia is one of those big ones. So check out, see, and they're in the superhero genre too. So that's what I did as well. Is like, what is My Hero Academia
well,
doing?
the freaking common denominator among all of those is that they're just telling a fun story with relatable characters, and that there's some sort of an interesting hook, and that's it. Like there might be, like I said, there might be like a deeper plot or two here and there over the course of, I don't know, 900 chapters, depending on which manga we're talking about. But otherwise, they're not like reinventing the wheel in terms
Absolutely,
of
No, but
absolutely
there's
not.
it's a totally different culture. Manga
they're
is
just staying
revered.
consistent.
No. Hold on. The comic books have been freaking hamstrung in this country since the 50s, right? They were turned into a children's
It's before it goes.
entertainment.
It's
thing.
before that. It's before that as well. It
Right,
there's-
but I'm just
you
saying,
can trace it. Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the history is. The point is that in Japan, everyone of every age still reads manga. So
Yeah.
then you have an outlet for whatever. You could do a cooking manga, you can do a soccer manga or a tennis manga, and you'll
they
have
do,
the audience.
which
And
is
they do.
crazy.
And they do.
They
They
absolutely
do, and they sell well, like Prince of Tennis.
That's what I'm
or
saying,
Food
dude.
Wars or whatever.
It's because
Yeah, so it's not just what is manga doing. Now, when you're bringing the manga over here, and why is it doing better over here? It's because they're advertising the crap of it with all the anime,
Mhm.
right? So you have this crossover, which Marvel and DC have totally given up on, even though they had the number one marketing program in the world. You had blockbuster films for 20 years, and you did freaking nothing to get people into comic book shops and reading comic books.
I just don't understand
Exact
cross-media
opposite
marketing.
what
I
they
don't
did with manga.
understand.
They do total crossover marketing between the anime and the manga and all the tchotchkes, and that's why they're successful.
I
Well,
will
they saw it-
never
they saw it as an
understand why
opening
there
to-
wasn't just like the biggest boom in history for comic book sales.
They saw
when
it as an
MCU
opportunity to
was
push the
popping
agenda.
off.
Yeah, it's
That's
like
why.
we went to
Well,
comic
it-
shops after seeing Iron Man and saw, oh, it's Riri Williams now. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it got co-opted. No, absolutely, it got co-opted, which is sad because otherwise, like, there should have been just like a brand new renaissance of Western comic books.
Oh, you like
Because
white
the
Captain
MCU
America? Surprise!
Well,
He's a
can't
Nazi.
have that.
Because
Yeah.
I hate Trump and I hate America.
Yeah.
But also,
Spencer.
what I've read My Hero Academia. I've seen My Hero Academia. These things are doing really well, and what they're doing is, according, as you said, not doing too much different than we are. They're following story structure. They're following. Here's a goal. Here is a character. They walk into the story. Here is a conflict. It's happened with the new one that everyone loves that is memed on Magic and Muscle. I already know I know what's probably going to happen. There's a conflict. There's a thing he has to overcome. Boom! We get a nice little episode, and he probably gets a friend at the end. The second conflict, he gets like a girlfriend who loves him, but he's like a Goku type. But they also follow these very similar story structures. I mean, the Eastern has like a different story flavor that they use as Kisho Tenketsu, but overall, they still have a lot of similarities to our stuff. It's just we have a main character, we have a conflict, a goal we're trying to reach, and then he reaches it. And with Magic and Muscle, like his main overarching goal is to just live in peace with his dad. But every episode, there's a new conflict that gets him a little closer to that goal. And that's what I mean by overarching story. And I think they do that same thing with the 6-issue arcs. Like it's an overarching arc with 6 issues, but every single issue has like something that gets us a little closer to the main development. And we get a little bit of pieces every once in a while. Like Magic and Muscle, it world builds by giving us what we need to know about the story at hand. And so we don't know everything in the first issue. And then the second issue, we get a little bit more. And then we get a little bit more, and then we enter the school, and the headmaster gives us a big info dump, stuff like that. So that's basically what I'm talking about. Just if you're worried about getting people, like, oh, there's too much information here, but too much world building here, but not enough information there, then that's what I mean. It's like that kind of thing, where it's like, here is a goal, your character, your goal, and we get the information we need that's reliant on the goal. That's
Well,
kind
a
of
balance,
what usually goes.
and that's a balance that is very delicate and incredibly.
It
I
is
think
tough,
people,
believe me.
people, I think, especially in this space, because in this space, and by that I mean just like the online kind of like, I guess, culture war indie space, have a lot of strong opinions on, and it is incredibly difficult to balance adhering to your vision while also, as an indie, understanding that your audience is everything. Like if you are entirely self-funded, whether you do crowdfunding or whether you're like we are over the Rippaverse, where we're self-funded and then we just reinvest everything that comes thereafter into the next projects, um, it's a very difficult balance to strike to be able to respond to your audience, because you have to understand that if you do not have the backing of mega corpos, that you are at the whim, essentially, of your paying audience. And so you have to give them what they want. There's a balance to strike there between giving them what they want and making them want to come back for more, while also like trying to adhere to like your actual creative vision. That's not an easy thing to do. Like, you have to sometimes figure out how to pivot and repackage what your goal was and what your story that you're telling is, in a way that your audience wants nipples. You won't give in. I mean, that's just bad. That's bad business practices, Bancroft.
them
If you're
nipples.
not if you're not giving them the tits, man.
Hashtag free the nipple.
Stand
ask
your
a question,
ground, Michael. Stand your ground.
No, Lucent's cool shit. But I guess to my point is that that's a really hard thing to strike, and that's a learning process for any indie worth their salt, I think.
It always is. Absolutely. That's why it's always good to get some second eyes. Editors are fantastic. Because as a writer, if you're writing the thing, you're blind to your own work. You just think everything's great.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, that's why you bring in other eyes. Absolutely. That's why
Stephen
you bring
King
in
had a
an
really good
editorial team.
method where if you have to self-edit, you have to put it down for like a month and then come back to it. And it does work. It does work, but then you lose a month.
I think self-editing is probably one of the worst choices for even the absolutely most talented creatives, because you're too close to
invested.
it. You have to
Yeah,
have other
in
eyes.
art,
And
you can turn your piece around and you can see the errors, but in writing, it's like you have to divorce yourself enough.
I think it's just creatives in general. And I say this with an immense love and respect for people who are far more creative than I am, both on the writing and on the art side.
No, stop.
Everything, like there's this weird thing that creatives will do where it's like a lot of them will believe that their stuff is gold, but also they're like some of the most, like, if they've got any two wits about them, they're also some of the most like self-critiquing people in the world. So it's like this weird dichotomy of the two ideals. And that's why, like, I think self-editing when it comes to creative projects, that's not like that. Okay, maybe you do like the first edit, but you got to have somebody with other eyes on it. You have to. Somebody who's not like necessarily emotionally invested in it, in terms of like this is their baby, right? Because like I would never try and downplay something that somebody spent, however many hours and days on writing a script or drawing out, X number of pages, and telling them this is worthless type of a thing. But that doesn't mean that things can't be improved upon. And so there's a delicate balance there to be found and struck, where it's like, okay, let me, this is your baby. I understand. Let me get eyes on this baby. Okay, you're not letting it breathe here. Okay, let's fix that, because we don't want it to die, right? And that's the importance of editorial. If editorial is doing its job, because editorial's job isn't to write the story or draw the book. It's just to make sure that it's presented in the truest, most optimal way of the creative's vision as possible.
Yeah,
Just to
just
make
don't
sure
get
it's
well-read's
buttoned
eyes
up.
on it, because that guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen.
There are a lot of editors in mainstream comics that fancy themselves writers, and I think they've proven to us all they're not.
Sure. Well,
I
Andrew,
don't think
this is
well-read actually knows how to read.
No, I've never read a thing in my life. So.
I pretend to know.
That's what he gets us for.
Yeah.
He gets us on the show for.
Yeah, you guys do all the dirty work. I get to just sit here and drink. It's my deal.
Yeah, he actually thinks that he's spelling the color red.
Yes. I'm very red. Andrew, this has been a rich conversation. I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me and inviting me into your digital home.
Oh, well, I appreciate you accepting the invite and gracing us with your presence and your
Oh,
perspective.
you don't need to talk it up like that. I appreciate you letting me on.
No, I appreciate you.
Okay, get a room.
I do want to
Everyone
ask.
appreciate me now.
Oh yeah,
Before
we
we move
appreciate
on-
you more.
Yes. Well read, Anus. That's actually my real name.
Oh,
So before we move on, yeah, no, let's not go into that
What?
lore.
Yeah, I'm good without that lore actually.
Yeah,
I think-
yeah.
Is
I
there
think
cream for that?
I'm good actually.
Before we move on, we spent a lot of time talking about your work and Rippaverse. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Did you go to school, and what did you study? What did you hope to accomplish?
Actually, so I studied a couple things. Primarily, my degrees and certificates are in business and in entertainment, specifically TV and film and stage. But I mean, those are things that I feel. While I'm not in a direct capacity utilizing them, I'm not like it's not like I'm some CFO or CEO or anything like that, and I'm clearly I'm not an actor. Um, but I feel like the education that I got from those pursuits are things that I'm able to leverage and help me make better decisions in my current capacity that I work. So as much as it was annoying to have to go to those classes and spend that money because I paid my own way through college, uh, it I think it was helpful in the long run for me. These days, probably not the case for most people. Go to
What do
trade
you-
school.
College is a scam.
So, what are your career aspirations then? What do you hope to accomplish with your degree?
Uh, as far as with my degree, I just hope to continue to be able to leverage the knowledge that I picked up from the degree as well as my work experience thereafter in the decisions that I make at the Rippaverse and
His real
beyond.
dream is to pay off his student loan.
Dude, I paid those off my damn self a long time ago. I'm blessed to have been able to do that. I had fairly sparse student loans, thankfully, because of just hard work. But that being said, as far as my aspirations, I just hope to be able to contribute to everything that's going on at the Rippaverse in a continually greater capacity. And that I want to be clear, that's not meant to be just like a pitch for the Rippaverse or anything. That's I genuinely enjoy being part of something that's bigger than myself. I don't have to be at the forefront of something. Um, I love the idea of assisting in the growth of something that's trying to just bring more entertainment. Like some people are going to think we're succeeding, some people are going to think we're failing, some people are going to think that it doesn't matter that we deliver our books on time. Whatever people's critiques or praises are. What matters to me is that I'm able to help in the positives, and that's my hope. That's my prayer. I'm hoping that I can continue to grow in a creative capacity. And I think I am blessed to have been put in a position where I'm surrounded by people who are so much more talented than I could ever hope to be on the writing side, on the art side. And so I just hope that at some point I'll be able to contribute on the creative aspect a fraction of the amount that guys like Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron and the Saskas and Eric are to just like bringing more entertainment. Like some people in the chat, some people on Twitter are going to agree, some are going to disagree. That's fine. I don't care. I just want to. I just love comics, man. Like I've got all these shelves of comics here. I've got a I've got a lot of short and long boxes in storage right now. I just love this medium, and I love storytelling, and I want to help try and bring more of it. With like DC and Marvel, don't obviously care about the characters that I grew up with. Fine, I'm gonna try my best to help like advance characters that are new. Maybe they're similar to characters that I grew up with. Maybe they're not. That's what I want to do.
Are you hoping to,
I love where I'm at. I love what I'm doing. I'm very blessed.
Make
Are you hoping
comics great again.
are you hoping to grow into being a creator on your own at some point and also develop your own properties?
As far as like stuff outside of the Rippaverse,
Even within,
Yeah.
I mean, whatever
yeah,
opportunities.
I
guess.
want to do both. If I'm being completely honest, I would love to be able to reach a point where I can help continue to grow out the universe of the Rippaverse in some positive way, and also create my own thing. I have no designs or interest in like creating a verse. That's not my thing. I don't care. I have a couple of stories already just on my own that I'm working on slowly. I'm working a lot, um, but and I'm blessed to be able to do so in the capacity that I am. But I have my own like just kind of one-off individual stories or like series that I'm working on that I want to do at some point in the future. And hopefully, I'll get to that point where I'll be able to do that. I'd love to be able to balance both, be able to write and help create for the Rippaverse, and also do my own stuff. That I think that would be the coolest thing in the world to me. That would I could I guess for to be super super cringy, just die happy. I guess like to be able to contribute to culture in a positive way for both a team aspect over at the Rippaverse as well as just kind of like my own stuff, my own creations. It's like this is my baby. It has nothing to do with anybody else's stuff. I hope people like it.
That's your nirvana.
Yeah, I guess for lack of a better term, yeah.
Yeah.
I love storytelling. I love art. I love visual mediums, whether it's movies, video games, comics. But comics is kind of my first love, so it's kind of the most important one.
Cool. Well, this has been excellent, and I'd love to do this again someday in the future. So I
Happy
hope
to be back anytime.
Cool.
Anytime you want to have somebody that can't shut the hell up, you know where I am.
Are you open to reviewing comics? Because we've always got a slot open.
Yeah, absolutely. Just give
Nice.
me enough time to actually read the thing.
Awesome. That's great to know. So thank you very much, Andrew.
And beware if it was written by Tom King, because we'll be here for a while.
We're coming for you, Tom King.
I made edits to his pages. It was terrible.
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, thank you everybody for being here tonight. Thank you very much to Andrew. Thank you very much to Eric July and providing us with the Rippaverse. Thank you to Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett for creating an excellent comic book for us to review and discuss on the panel today. Literature Devil, Alasma Twitless, and Mike S. Miller. Wah, wah. We appreciate all of you being here. And thank you all. We'll do this again really soon. We've got a lot more reviews coming up. So stay tuned and look forward to more.
I just want to point out I got roped into this by
Wait, what do you mean you got more reviews? I need to go to sleep.
Yeah, we're doing.
I've got insomnia. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And Well Red's like, but I'll get Chuck Dixon said he wants it, and I asked Joe Bennett, he said it's okay. I'm like, oh, you mother.
Yeah. I went out and I asked all the creators, is it okay?
I told him I don't want to critique someone who doesn't ask me for a critique. So
exactly. I asked all the creators on behalf of Uptight Mike. I said, Mike is very sensitive about talking about other people's work. Is it okay if Mike talks about your book? And they all said yes. So there you are.
So he suckered me into it.
You did a great job, Mike. We loved having you here. So I'm gonna do it again. Put you on the spot.
No, you're not.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you later.
Peace.
Outro.